2 minutes left.
No, like they're
We're live. How's it going?
Matt Fradd.
I just want to invite everybody right now just to show Elizabeth Warren some love by giving us a thumbs up, you know. Or if you don't care about how angry Elizabeth Warren is, I don't care, give us a thumbs up. And if you do care, give us a thumbs up. And subscribe. There's
Elizabeth Warren and her
Elizabeth
anger.
Warren.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So, what do we know? Shayla, go. What's happening in the country with Roe versus Wade?
There was a leak from the Supreme Court to Politico of a draft, a majority draft from Justice Alito that the Supreme Court is probably going to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Suck it. It's
Unbelievable.
awesome.
Unbelievable.
So that would make abortion bannable at the state level through all stages.
Right. It would return the authority to the states to decide the question of abortion. Correct?
Yeah, that's
if
right.
that happens.
That's correct.
And what's the reaction?
Insanity.
Insanity. There's so much to say about this, and I feel like I'm in a dream. Have you ever had those dreams where you're trying to move but you can't because it's through quicksand?
Yeah.
And this should just be a slam dunk, and we can't even have an authentic, honest conversation about it because of people like Elizabeth Warren. I thought it'd be great to look at what she said in response to this and just to see whether or not there's sense behind her words.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Is that something you could pull up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We could also chat for a bit until you find it.
Well, I'm just going to drag and drop it and see what happens.
We're going to play it.
Right,
here we go. Live
Let's
television.
do it. Listen to these words carefully.
All right, listen up.
Here we go. How's that?
Yeah, it looks good. I can see it, but like, will we hear it or will you hear it in your headphones?
You'll be able to hear it.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
I am angry.
She's angry.
Because we have reached the culmination of what Republicans have been fighting for decades now. And we are going to fight back. I am angry because of who will pay the price for this. It will not be wealthy women get on an airplane. They can fly to another state. They can fly to another country. They can get the protection they need.
Protection.
This is fall on the poorest women in our country. This is fall on those who have been raped. This is fall on others who are already struggling to work for each job, to be able to support their children.
She's nuts.
Well, I am here because I am angry, and I am here because the United States Congress can change all of this. Angry, but committed.
Understand this. Here we go.
I have seen the world where abortion is illegal.
Oh, God have mercy. What does that look like?
We are not going back.
Oh, bless her. Bless her.
Not ever. No. So stand with me. We are not going back.
Yes, you are, sweetheart.
What a word. Oh my gosh. Here's the scariest thing in the world about that. Either you recognize that she's insane, morally and intellectually, or that makes sense to you. That's what terrifies me, that there is an overwhelmingly large group of people for whom what she just said actually makes sense. And then there's a group of people who understand that was sheer idiocy, beyond the pale. I wish I had the words. I don't have the words to describe the idiocy that was, but we should look at her words.
Yeah.
That's the ground for beginning to understand there are two divided camps here with an ever-expanding chasm between them.
An ever-expanding chasm between them, and not only because we're using words differently, but because one side is believing lies and the other isn't. If you think it's okay for big, strong people to slaughter little, weak, innocent people, you're a bad person.
Absolutely. But reprehensible. evil even.
Yeah.
Evil to believe that that's an okay thing, much less that it's a right, much less that it's a thing that's
Healthcare.
an advancement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, healthcare. I mean, where do we start? Where do we start with the abuse of speech just in that little clip? Not to mention the entire movement.
I think abortion.
Let's take the word abortion.
The word abortion is problematic.
Very, very. It literally means, if you want to be fair to both sides, I think you can say the abortion is the willful termination of the fetus in the womb.
Even the word termination, it stops. It willfully stops it. I think we should continue
Willfully
to
ends.
use ugly words for ugly behavior.
Well, de facto, it's murder.
Yeah. Well,
De
is
facto.
it? It's not. I think murder is more of a legal term. So maybe it
what's
will
the
be
word?
considered.
What-
Well,
what's-
slaughter,
Slaughter.
killing. Like
But
this
slaughter
is what
and killing
it
of
is.
an innocent person
Yes.
is murder de facto, and that's legal, but it's also
Yeah,
moral.
sure. Okay.
It's also moral, as opposed to killing in battle,
Fair enough.
which
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah.
So there is a difference. But what does the word mean? I was trying to be fair to both sides. You say, listen, can somebody who is pro-abortion say that it's the willful termination of a life in the womb? Can they say that? Can they admit that?
I think so.
They can't not say that.
No.
Or do they still say that's not a life?
Again, I think that logic can only grow within soil. And it doesn't seem like there's much soil in the brains of people
Yeah.
who are addicts or who have willfully believed lies. So I
right.
don't even know if
That's probably
some
true.
of these folks like Elizabeth Warren are interested in logic.
Yeah. There's no ground. There's no ground. I mentioned on this show before, I think, in the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, they had this display with all these hanging trees, and they were all cut off at the roots and in the air.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they had no roots. And it reminds me of what you just said. And it's a wonderful example of people like Elizabeth Warren and anybody who can say something like, abortion is healthcare. Neither one of those terms are understood by the moral idiot who says abortion is healthcare. It's mind-numbing. And I think I would get in trouble for saying what I just said, but I don't care about that. I care about whether or not it's true. Abortion is healthcare. The absurdity and the insanity and the immorality in that statement is so far beyond my ability to comprehend. And I wish I weren't the only, I wish we weren't the only ones.
And what's funny is I threw up a short today, like a little video where she was saying that. And for a moment I thought, well, what if I put like a slaughtered fetus at the end of this video? But YouTube would ban me.
Yes.
And fair enough. I mean, they have standards. They don't want to present violence. But the same people would also say that abortion isn't violent. So it's contradictory. You can't put up images of violence. However, abortion isn't violence. It's healthcare and ought to be celebrated.
Yeah.
Does
anyone say
nuts.
it's not violence?
What do you think Elizabeth Warren would say if you
I
said,
wonder.
don't you think it's a violent act? She would say something like, it's a violent act not to allow it, or some such
she would
nonsense.
say that. Yeah.
What's interesting is this like Foucaultian idea that it's not about truth, it's just about power.
Yeah.
It really applies to her
Very
and
much.
her ilk
Very
because
much.
she isn't interested in logic. She doesn't believe in it. It doesn't seem.
No.
So she just resorts to shouting and being angry,
Shouting,
and using emotional arguments.
Yeah. I love it how she began with anger and ended with anger, as if the emotions was the highest thing.
Right.
You're just totally right. There's no ground of truth there. You just really wonder. Even saying something like, this is the culmination of what the Republicans want for the last several decades.
So?
It's simply not true anyway.
Well, no, we have a lot of terrible Republicans.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't want this, right?
Right,
But even if that is a true statement, why is that bad? Suppose it is the culmination of what many
Yeah.
Republicans have been fighting for. Okay,
Well, but
what's
it's
the
not-
argument? Even if that were the
Even
case,
if it were,
granted.
and we're not putting up with it, I guess. But
You have to show why it's wrong. So maybe the Republicans want something that's evil and now it's culminating. Okay,
Yeah.
what's the argument?
Right.
Well, the argument seems to be that this is that poor people, this will fall on them, and rich people will be able to fly elsewhere to pay someone to kill their child.
Yeah.
And she also said mothers who are taxed, women who have been raped.
Yes. Yeah. It is the Pierre Foucault power politics arguments that aren't grounded in truth or reality.
Yeah. Let me suggest a syllogism. Not that those of Elizabeth's ilk are interested, I don't think, in a syllogism, but, and I just said it before, but it's always wrong for big, now you could phrase this syllogism a lot more, I don't know, simply, but there's a bit of rhetoric in it. It's always wrong for a big, strong person to kill a little, weak, innocent person. But abortion involves a big, strong person killing a little, weak, innocent person. Therefore, abortion is always wrong. If you want to deny that premise, if you want to say that's just not true, you have to either take aim at one of the premises and say one of them or both of them are false. You have to say, I'm equivocating on one of the terms, or that the logic doesn't follow. But since the logic does follow, what will you do?
Right.
And so it doesn't really matter how angry you get over a syllogism. It stands or falls on that. What do you think?
And Elizabeth Warren contradicts herself by saying, in the case, we willfully want this big, strong person to be able to murder the innocent person, and the people that don't want that are picking on little innocent people who won't have access to abortion.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt the powerful rich people. It hurts the little innocent people. So we need to kill innocent little people to protect little innocent people from Big Brother or whatever. It's just a complete set of contradictions, and I don't think there's any sense to it at all.
Yeah, we should rejoice right now. Here, let's rejoice.
Yeah, let's rejoice.
It's funny. Like, we should rejoice. We should also mourn the fact that this country has permitted such a grave evil to take place every day, and it continues to.
Yes,
but you got to take your victories where you can.
Absolutely,
where you can. You brought up something to me that I just. Oh, there's also bourbon. I don't know what you want. I should have asked you. You can give that to one of them, and you can just drink bourbon out the bottle.
Can I have the bottle, guys?
You could drink bourbon
permissible?
out of that bottle and still make more sense than Elizabeth.
I am so tempted.
Native American Warren.
If I could just forget we're on camera, I would grab that bottle right now.
You?
Hand this glass over.
Well, just go there's a glass out.
a glass?
Yeah,
Okay.
just don't hit the camera and just walk around it. And then you drink that.
Okay.
Do you see that pile of dishes there? Right. They're all clean. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Use a small glass. No, this is a moment, in a way, to celebrate. If it's true, what are the odds that this is not true?
What do you guys think?
I mean, it seems to be a draft from a majority of the Senate. That being said, I haven't. Yeah, I mean,
The court.
What?
The court, not
The court.
the Senate.
Sorry, the court, Supreme Court. It seems to be a draft from the majority of the Supreme Court. That being said, I haven't followed before too many Supreme Court justice kind of issues that they've changed, that they've enacted, and so I don't know how the process is, and I don't know if things like media attention, and
Also, this is
people
unprecedented in this document being leaked in the way that it's been.
Right.
to my knowledge,
Yeah, mine too.
But yeah, and I think that I don't know how the justices will react to the public reaction to it. Like, I don't know if they're how what's the word, vulnerable they are to just public opinion swaying their opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, they are elected.
We'll
officials,
see.
so who knows?
Well, let's say this.
All right.
If for some bizarre reason that the Supreme Court returns power to the states on this issue, that is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that we should rejoice.
Yeah.
So how about this? To life.
To life. And to Elizabeth Warren's sanctity. And that she would be given the grace to repent.
Pray
and
for
to
her
sober
soul.
up.
Pray for her soul.
Yeah. I gave a talk recently at St. Gregory the Great Academy, and you helped me with that talk, and you made this suggestion to me, which was the kind of central point of the talk that I gave. And that was that good Catholic education, or forget Catholic, good education would have us come to know what is true, love that thing, and then serve that thing. Did I have that in the right
Yes.
order? To know,
That's the
love, and
Baltimore
serve.
Catechism.
This is what the Baltimore Catechism says.
Know, to love, and serve the Logos.
Right.
Yes.
And then you pointed out that what often happens through public school education or indoctrination through television or media is the exact inverse. That hierarchy of knowing, loving, and serving is inverted, so that instead, little Lizzie Warren, as a 6-year-old girl, maybe, was told that abortion is very good for women, and we should want what's good for women, right? And she was basically, and I'm using her as a punching bag, but let's anyone, right? Sure. They're given this ideology, and they're taught first to serve it,
Yes.
not to know what's true, but to serve it.
That's right.
This is why you'll chat with kids and they might tell you that transgenderism is good and that sodomy is good, and right, because they've been told to serve this thing. They haven't really been given the option. They haven't even been giving an argument for it. They serve it. Right. If you serve something long enough, you come to hold a particular affection for that thing. And that might be because you feel that you're on the right side of history or in the in-group or on the side of the oppressed. You come to sort of identify with this thing. Then the final step is you come to, quote unquote, know it. Now, you can't know what is false, but you can, in the sense of accepting it as true, but you can rationalize it. And I think that's what we see. When we chat with a pro-abort like Liz Warren, we're seeing somebody who has the hooks of an ideology into her, and she's not actually interested in truth. That's why I said earlier, it's not merely a matter of we're using different language. It's you're not interested in the way things are.
That's right.
Your thoughts?
That's right. No, and when you invert that order, those three things change meaning. So to serve the agenda, not just abortion, but all the LGBT, all the agendas, to serve them and to come to love them isn't love. It's a kind of a self-arrogation that we see in virtue signaling. It's really that kind of thing. It's when you know first, then love. That kind of love is a humility that says, I acquiesce to the nature of reality, and I give in to truth in my love that this thing is worthy of love, as opposed to I arrogate to myself and thereby virtue signal the agenda I support because I get human respect for it, as opposed to respect from God the other way around. And as you mentioned, this knowing is a kind of not just rationalization, it's a false kind of knowing. So I guess rationalization is the right word, but the love also is a Stockholm syndrome. And then the knowing becomes a knowing about Stockholm syndrome, which turns into this weird little myopic, self-referencing, subjective self-love, as opposed to the opposite when you know the Logos, know Christ, love Christ, and serve Christ. It's worshiping the objective will of truth. And it's such a radically different thing. And if you look at the public schools, and you start with John Dewey, and you look what they've morphed into, it truly is serving the agenda, loving what you're serving out of self-adulation, and then thinking that you know something that you don't. And that's exactly why people that are deluded like Liz Warren can say, I know this issue. And she's completely wrong about nearly everything she says, because she's saying she knows something that she doesn't know at all. And she truly appears to love it, right? I really want all women everywhere to be able to slaughter their unborn children. That's literally what she's saying.
Yes.
So this inversion is, I think, absolutely key, not just for this conversation, but to begin to say, hey, what's going on with public schools? What kind of education did we receive? We were all in this. And if it didn't envelop us, we can thank our families and our churches for mitigating the damage that this kind of inverted order does when you serve, love, and think you know a thing. And I think that's the big divide. That's the big divide.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. Knowing, loving, and serving.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why it sometimes feels when you're chatting with somebody that person like just isn't interested in what's true. Because if you put forth an argument like the one I just did, what you're met with is the fallacy ad ignominium, that is to say, an appeal to shame. How could you, right? Or an appeal to pity. Like women who are raped, what are they going to do? These are literally logical fallacies.
That's right.
It's not even... So if you want to make an argument, feel free. But since you don't have truth on your side, it makes sense why you would appeal to anger, the passions, appeal to shame.
That's right. That's right. And victimization.
Yeah.
It's identity politics. It's all it is. And you made me think of something I just forgot. But you made me think of something really, really important here, is that this, even worse than saying that you know, that even worse than using those fallacies is they say, Matt, we're saying the same thing. This is what I get most when I argue with pro-death people and tell them abortion is wrong. They end up saying something like, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just so bizarre. And that's what happens when you abuse speech so much that words essentially don't really mean anything.
Yeah. I want to take a pause for a moment right now and invite people who are watching this to join our community on Locals. Would you mind putting mattfradd.locals.com below? I run a daily podcast over on Locals. So every morning, it's called Morning Coffee. We get together and have caffeinated conversations about theology, philosophy. And the reason I'm over on Locals is that it's a free speech platform that is not going to ban me for saying abortion is murder, transgenderism is crazy, the things that everyone said 5 minutes ago but now have become secular dogma, and so to speak against them gets you excommunicated.
That's right.
Right, out of the fold.
That's right.
And it's like you don't know when it's going to happen. It might happen today after this video.
Right.
Just because of the truths that we're saying.
That's right.
So if people want to go over to Locals, you can watch these podcasts that we do for free. You just have to sign up on Locals like you would have to sign up on Twitter in order to engage with that kind of content. So mattfradd.locals.com. There's also a bunch of bonus content that we're putting out there frequently. So it would really mean a lot to me if you would go and join over there because, man, what do you think about the censoriousness of the left? I've had this idea for a while now that people are beginning to view the, however you want to define them or label them, the left, the woke, the progressives. We're beginning to view them the way people viewed Christians in the 50s, rightly or wrongly. But there was this sense in which those Christians are censorious, they're preachy, they're boring, they don't think for themselves, right? They're uninteresting, right? Now, maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there wasn't. I didn't live in the 50s, 60s, 70s when people were, commenting on these things. But that is the accusation that seems very kind of apropos of the left right now, such that you even have people like Elon Musk who are recognizing this and even stating it outright. And so what was I going to say? Yeah, just this.
Well,
this,
I completely agree.
What's the censoriousness? What does that say about their inability to refute an argument?
It's dogmatism. It's materialistic dogmatism. It's its own religion.
Materialistic dogmatism. Somebody go start a podcast called that.
That's what it is. Could you look up John Dunphy? He wrote an article in The Humanist.
How do you spell his last name?
Dunphy. John Dunphy. And he has this really interesting quote that I really think fleshes out what we're dealing with here.
I can try and look it up.
Okay, John Dunphy, he's a school teacher, and he said he's making the claim that this new humanism is a new religion.
Oh, for
and
sure.
the new pulpit is the classroom. And that the new army of religious preachers from the left, you got to look up the quote. It's actually really, really important and really good.
Are you looking it up too? We'll have a contest.
Yeah,
do you have it?
See. I have the battle for this is John.
That's
J.
it. That's it.
The battle for humankind's future must be waged and won in the public school classroom by teachers who correctly perceive their role as the proselytizers of a new faith, a religion of humanity, utilizing a classroom instead of a pulpit to carry humanist values to whoever they teach.
Keep going. There's a little bit more that's very important that follows that.
I got to click through the link here. That's all.
Oh, sorry. Well, that was a good start. But you have the end.
The classroom must and will become the arena of conflict between the old and the new, the rotting corpse of Christianity, together with its adjacent evils and misery, and the new faith of humanism.
Okay. That's the quote.
That is a really great quote.
That's a really great quote.
Break that open for us.
Yeah. And what year was that written? Was that in 1983?
Yep.
1983 that was written. And here's the thing. If you read that quote, no one would agree or admit that that's what's going on in the public classroom, but I can assure you that's exactly the dogma underlying modern public education, whether or not people embrace it openly or not. Those are the foundational roots of their intentions. And you can drive those roots all the way back to John Dewey, the experimental psychologist, up through Benjamin Bloom and all the other architects of the modern school. This really is about the religion of humanism, secular humanism. And they really do view Christianity as a rotting corpse of evils. And that's just where it's very religious. And
look at the religious fervor of Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, look at her. She's like public school teachers that I've worked with the last 30 years. Honestly, if you approach them with an alternative to the narrative, there's no discussion, but there's a ton of name calling. I've said this on
you
here
told
before.
me that.
Yeah,
You sat down in
you're
an interview,
onboard
didn't
terrorist.
you?
Yeah.
Tell us, I mean, if you don't mind sharing that
Oh, sure,
experience.
sure. Yeah, last time I was here, I talked about the fact that I went to an administrator's credentialing program and I did it in solidarity with my lovely wife, Faith. And it was just such a nightmare, and I knew it would be. And without me even saying anything in class, I got called to a meeting where they said they were very disturbed by my use of the word objective truth. As they
It's a disturbing thing.
It's a very disturbing
Especially if
thing.
it hits you in the face.
Yes. And they literally accused me of white supremacy, being a racist, being a bigot, and all these ridiculous things. And it's so bald-faced right now.
Yeah.
That and what I wrote was, they were telling me, you're going to be uncomfortable in this class. And I just wrote, I don't mind being uncomfortable in the face of truth. I do mind being uncomfortable in the face of non-truths. And I know the difference between what's true and what's not true. So I won't be humiliated or shamed by something that's false. And that they found very problematic. But I think it's more problematic to say that if you are a white person in this class, you're going to be uncomfortable and you should be ashamed because you're a racist. And that's what they told us.
It's insane.
Blank.
It's so insane.
Yes. And their response when they got pushback from my wife was, you need to read White Fragility.
Oh, yeah, which I hear is a garbage
It's
heap.
it's a garbage heap that people can take seriously if
They're
they
shamed
serve,
into liking it.
love,
Yeah.
and know.
Yeah.
If you know, love, and serve, you see it for the ridiculousness it is. Just like Ibram X. Kendi, the guy's at at Boston University or Boston College, I don't remember, but he's written. I read his book on called Stamped, and he has a bunch of other books or works on what do they call it? Anti-racism. And if you serve, love, and know, those books are very appealing. If you know, if you know, love, and serve, then you see the books for the ridiculousness that they are.
He's at Boston University, by the way.
Boston University, yeah, Boston University. And he says something like, to fix discrimination in the past, we have to have discrimination now that will have a different kind of discrimination in the future. Something like that. That's not a quote.
Yeah.
But just asinine statements like that, double standards, double speak, victim ideology, and really an inversion of what they mean. So they'll say, you're privileged, when they're really saying, I want me to be privileged.
If you're watching this right now and you haven't read the book 1984, please read that book. Have your kids read that book and explain to them the insanity of transgenderism. Explain to them the ugliness of sodomitic relationships. Explain to them the propaganda, that we were fed when they were trying to push through same-sex marriage. They would say, hey, be on the right side of history.
Right.
Because what I'm finding as my kids get older is they're actually smart. I've shared this a bunch on the show, but when my kids were really young, I was really afraid. How are they going to live in this culture? But what I did was continue to have conversations with my kids, point out the insanity of Disney doing certain things, and my kids have come along for the ride. Honestly, it's the rebellious position to take today.
Yes.
Like, if you want to be a rebel, you just have to be a Christian. You just have to stand up against the secular dogma that's been bullhorned at us.
That's
Not
right.
a verb, but yeah.
I've done the same with my kids. My oldest is 26, my youngest is 20, and they have the same reaction. I guess it's the rebellious point, but because we brought them along with us, these conversations, they haven't fallen for it. They just haven't fallen for the hype, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's a grace from God that they are deluded like that.
I know I've said this with you earlier, but I suspect we are going to see a pendulum swing.
Yeah, you mentioned that today.
I just don't believe we can keep this up.
Yeah. What do you think that's going to be like, the pendulum swing?
I don't know. What do I mean, I'm just, if I had to spitball, I said to my wife the other night, like, maybe in 50 years, we Christians will have to speak out against the errors of Netflix's Puritanism, because we might fling so fast in the other direction that Christians are going to have to, well, it's funny I say that, but there's a sort of Puritanism now. I mean, are people having sex? I don't know. Or are they just like looking at porn, So we are the ones now talking about the beauty and the goodness of things called humans, the beauty and goodness of that beautiful human act, appropriate only for marriage.
That's right.
But it felt like maybe we had to speak against that in a day and age where, I don't know, people were more overt when they would say things like sex is bad, or I don't know if anyone ever said that, but
you might be right. I mean, the truth is this. Christians,
I have a lot of hope. That's my point.
You're hopeful, right?
Like, how many people do we have watching this little channel right now?
We're almost at 400.
We have almost 400 people who haven't thrown up. Well, maybe they have, but they're still watching. Like, people are interested in these conversations.
I hope they are. It's really important.
Like, whatever you think of Daily Wire, whatever you think of Ben Shapiro, whatever you think of their politics, no doubt we all have disagreements, and maybe some large, some small. But look at their explosion.
Yeah.
They are huge. Yeah. Look at CNN's live streaming service that lasted as long as my Brita filter, you know?
Mm-hmm. Which is to say, it didn't last. I don't follow the CNN.
Or to quote Parks and Recreation, wait, should I change my Brita filter? Yeah, like it's interesting to see.
Very interesting.
Like, Daily Wire just put $100 million into Daily Wire Kids. They're going to start creating children's programming.
Wow.
So the point isn't to canonize Daily Wire or Ben Shapiro, who's a Jew, obviously. The point isn't to do that. The point is just to say there is a sizable counter reaction to this.
Yeah, like you said, if there's 400 people listening that would like to invert the order of what we've been conditioned in. That's a great sign. But all of this really does go back to education and its role in shaping future culture, doesn't it? Who's the great soul who said, whatever happens in the classroom of today is the politics of the next generation? I think it's been misattributed to Lincoln, but I'm not sure who said it. But there's a lot of truth to that. And so this generation is looking at what was cultivated in Dunphy's generation. You know, this new religion of secular humanism is just second nature. So it is kind of exciting that there are people that are kind of waking up to the wokeness. Mm-hmm. 1984 says, how many am I holding up? And he's holding up 4, and he's supposed to say 5. Well, literally today, in math classes, you can say that 2 + 2 = 5. And if you give the right reason, you can pass that.
Is that a true statement?
That's a true statement.
I presume you wouldn't lie, given we're speaking about the errors of speech.
I might lie, or I might be wrong, but I'll tell you what. If you look up San Mateo School District in California, they have a manual about that thick about how modern mathematics in America is racist. And one of the racist tenets is that white people expect right answers. That's literally one of their things. Look it up. San Mateo County. I've reached out to the guy who wrote that manual, asked him to have a conversation with me, but I haven't heard back from him.
Have you heard of the racism of low expectations? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, of course.
Like the idea that people of color aren't interested in right answers? Like they don't care about what's true? Are they idiots? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what they're saying. That is definitely what they're saying.
I don't mean you. I mean those people.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. It's such a racist program. I mean, even when I was a few decades back, even they were doing this thing about culture, where you were supposed to have different expectations of behavior from people of color than you were of white people. And it was the racism of low expectations. And it's in books. I can't remember the names of just terrible books that our school districts made us read. So it's a very, very real thing that this rampant racism being called anti-racism is cuckoo as Liz Warren. That's really where we're at right now.
You know, I don't think it's true that if you put a frog in water and increase the temperature, that it'll just sit there. I think that's a wives' tale or an analogy, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But it's a great analogy.
It's a great analogy.
Because today you're going to have people in the comment section who are like, okay, like maybe the church is wrong on this. They really want to adjust Christian doctrine because they've become spineless or they've become they've been preached at long enough that they can no longer accept what's true. Mm-hmm. But you know, my thought is there's probably going to be some people out there who are like, okay, calm down, Steve. Like all this negativity about public schools. Yeah. But 50 years ago, if you had have said to them, here's what will be happening in most public schools, they would be outraged.
Yes.
But today they're not.
Right.
But that's only a sign that they've been conditioned, not that they shouldn't be outraged.
That's right.
So,
and it's an irony of scientism that it may be true that the frog literally will jump out. And I think I've actually had somebody tell me that. But the truth, the frog really will jump out. But that doesn't change the analogy.
That's my point.
The truth is we're talking about it, the spirit here, the soul here, is that as things increasingly devolve into stupidity in the public schools, we're more and more accustomed to it. It's very apt. Unto the point where I would say today, the majority of people who accept what they've learned in the public schools are suffering a kind of soul death. What I would see in the classroom over the last 30 years is what I called an educational coma. The kids are comatose. And that's a defense mechanism, and I'm impressed by that. But if you continue in that state of comatose and automatically go after materially the things the school turns you towards, you are that frog in the pot that sat there till its soul died. And the heating water, of course, is the culture. Heating water is the thing to be able to accept something like abortion is healthcare. It would, I mean, in the 50s, I don't think that would have flown, would it? Maybe it would have. I hope not.
Yeah.
The asinine things said today are just unbelievable. So I just want to say this. On Liz Warren, we should leave that poor woman alone. She's a mess. We should pray for her. She's a mess. But the main point there is the word life. Our founding fathers said, we have the inalienable right to life. They said that. Today, what does that mean? Liz Warren would say that means we have the right to kill, murder, destroy. We have the right to kill. We have the right to death is literally what Liz Warren would have to say, but she wouldn't agree to it. She doesn't have the grounding to understand that that's what she's saying, right? So it's beautiful if the Supreme Court returns it to the states, then they can leave in the hands of the states whether or not to be pro-life or pro-death, but at least it's not the entire nation.
Yeah.
Right? So with that in mind, I just wanted to recover that one point. It's not just life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We literally promote this frog in the boiling water, soul death. We promote death. We promote a self-imposed slavery that they literally call freedom. And we promote the pursuit of serious unhappiness. Serious unhappiness.
Yeah, that's an important point that often, when I was writing my book on Thomas Aquinas and happiness, this idea, like Aquinas understands happiness as the perfection of human nature. It's not a subjective feeling of contentment. Exactly. It's actually something objective.
Right.
So you should pursue happiness, and that means become perfect.
That's right.
You know.
That's exactly right. And you said nature.
Yeah.
That's another word equivocated. So when the modern world of Liz Warren types say nature, they mean something like trees.
Yeah.
When Thomas says it, he means that principle
Essence.
of motion and rest, the essence, the formal cause of a thing, the thing that is to be perfected, the thing that is to be fulfilled. And it's absolutely true that objectively, virtue fulfills a nature and viciousness tears it down. That's something you can't say in the modern school today.
Yeah, that's really good. Virtuous perfects a nature, human nature. Viciousness tears it down.
That's right. Every time. And it's as plain to see as just looking out in the world today. Look at a person who holds a vicious value. I'm never going to mention Liz Warren again after this, but Liz Warren, the things she says are so vicious and she's so angry, she has no idea, but what a broken soul. What a sad, pathetic example of a human person to say the things she says. And to be arrogantly proud of it.
And to believe the things she says.
Oh, to believe, not just believe it, say, this is what I'm hanging my hat on. This is what I'm going forward with. It's so pathetic and so sad. If we did anything, we really should have pity for her.
Let's ask everybody watching right now, maybe you're not Catholic, and so if you're not, I respect your decision, of course, to not do this with us, but maybe we could offer a Hail Mary for her. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Blessed Mother, we pray that you would lead Elizabeth Warren to your Son, and that she would be given the grace of repentance. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. I mean, what's difficult is like living in a social media landscape where we don't agree on what's true and what's not.
Right.
So people can go onto their social media platforms and say true things, like we probably shouldn't be killing innocent people for no reason, which you actually, there's never a reason to kill an innocent person. Right. But that, no matter how sophisticated or slick or rhetorically, whatever, crafty, your statement is, it doesn't seem, that's the frustration of it, isn't it?
That's the frustration.
It's like we're talking at a wall.
Yeah, and that's perennial. With the serve, love, and know, you inevitably have to abuse speech to believe the things that are not true. You have to abandon the ground. I do want to mention one book, though. This is so important. This book has the potential to change your life if you know how to read. And basic true comprehension, and you take the words for what they mean. Joseph Pieper wrote a book called Abuse of Language, Abuse of Power. And it's an explanation about what is the nature of language, which is purpose and nature. It's so beautiful because he gets it from Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah.
Joseph Pieper is a Thomist. And he says, language, the nature of language is to convey the truth in the service of others. Those are two vital requirements to the nature of language. And if you began to understand that, then you could frame up how even the things we say or things other people say, why are you saying them and do they convey truth? We have to return to one thing, to make sure that we do our best to make sure that our words convey truth, and then make our question about what's being said is asking whether or not it's true. That's the vital question. Augustine says it all over the place in his works. He says, when a teacher speaks, the student's job is to listen and ask the question, is that true? And if it's true, to accept it and to applaud.
Who said this?
Augustine.
Right.
Augustine said that.
Yeah.
Augustine also said, who is so stupidly curious as to send their kid to school to learn what the teacher has to say?
Wow.
Which says that the teacher's job is not to say what they think. The teacher's job is to discover the truth and convey it in the service of his scholars.
It felt like maybe back in the 80s and 90s, it was in vogue to be an epistemological relativist, right? Well, there's different cultures, they have different opinions. We really can't know what's objectively true or not. Or at least if we can know some truth, so maybe we're not epistemological relativists, but we're moral relativists, right?
Oh, sure.
But it's very strange because these moral relativists seem to have evolved into people like Liz Warren, who are very dogmatic. Objective truth exists, and that is that abortion is a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you asked her to give us the ontological basis for such a belief, she'd yell at you or say how angry she was again.
She'd have no idea. She had no idea. And I don't know what kind of person that is. So now epistemological relativism is now epistemological skepticism. It's a bizarre thing. And you're right. I don't think she'd agree that there's objective truth, but she would claim that abortion is a right as it's an objective truth. Yeah. I don't think she would admit that there's objective truth. Do you?
I guess it depends on how you phrase it.
We should ask her.
We should.
Do you believe in objective truth? She say, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it's objectively true that there's no objective truth.
She seems like a smart, educated person. I mean, not during that clip, and not because of many of the things she says, but she's clearly an educated woman.
Well, abusing the word education, sure.
This is good.
Yeah.
Tell us about education versus conditioning.
Very good.
Or what's the opposite? Yeah. What is education? Sum that up real quick, and then what's the opposite?
Sure. The Latin root educare means to lead forward. And we must agree, I hope, that an educated person has left the darkness of error and entered into the light of truth. So you have Plato in the Republic who would have what's called the divided line. And there's the world of appearances. Yeah. And above the divided line, there's the world of intelligibility. And so the idea of educating a pedagogue would lead the child from the world of appearances, the bottom of the cave, up into the light of truth, objective truth, to the world of intelligibility. And it would be the most basic thing about education to say that intelligibly, intellectually, conceptually, when the mind converges with reality, a person knows what a thing is. That's the bare minimum.
It's what Aquinas says, the union of thought and thing.
That's right. And the adequacy of the mind to know the thing.
Yeah.
And this is where the modern educator says, listen, you can't know objective truth. That's an objective truth claim, but that's what they say. Yeah. So, and you don't know this, maybe you do know this, but everything in education is below the line. Right. It's all in the realm of appearances because of materialism, because of material scientism. It's all down there. So it's really interesting. I don't know. I don't ever think I could say someone like Elizabeth Warren would be educated not based on anything she's ever said in public. Now, she might be educated and she might be playing a role. I don't know. But her words demonstrate very clearly that she doesn't know what things are. And I think it's a contradiction to say somebody who doesn't know what things are can be an educated person. So this is very dangerous. No one would agree with that today in the public schools. They would say that you don't even know what you're talking about because they don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But I can say this. To be educated, we must begin by saying, at least we know what things are in reality. Yeah. We have the ability to know things. Yeah. We can know truth. Yep. Truth exists, and we can rely on that truth. I think it's an abuse of speech today to say, I mean, you'd have to look at the person speaking, but we could hear someone talk and say, is that a fruit of education, or is that a fruit of indoctrination, or as you called it, conditioning? And I think the majority of people in the public sphere today are exhibiting artifacts of conditioning, definitely not of education.
That is excellent. And I love that you called me on my abusive speech there, because that's what it was. When we use the word educated today, what we usually mean is she went or he went to a good, whatever that means, school.
Another abusive speech.
Another abusive speech, right?
Right.
What do you say? A school that is considered
Good.
good.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, if you don't come to know what things are, you're not educated.
I think it's the ground floor.
To some degree.
You could probably still know what things are and still not be educated.
No, I think it was Aquinas is often attributed to saying this, that you can spend your whole life and not understand the nature of a fly.
You can't exhaust the nature of a single fly.
Tell us why that is, because it sounds like we're kind of vacillating here.
Right.
You have to be able to know things to be educated, but you can't know what a fly is.
Well, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that he doesn't say you can't know what a fly is. He says you can't exhaust the essence of a single fly, which is completely different to say, can you know what a fly is? Yeah, we can know what all kinds of classes of flies are.
I see.
What you
Yeah,
can't
thank you for
have
correcting me there.
is perfect knowledge of the fullness of truth on this side of heaven. So we can know all these things, but we ought not to delude ourselves and think that we can know the fullness of essences. That's formal causality.
Gotcha.
Well, we can know we can't even know the fullness of material causes.
Yeah.
When you consider prime matter and consider how form and determinate form and matter, composite form exists. It's really beautifully complex. It's not impossible to know, but it is impossible to exhaust, meaning to become omniscient about a thing.
We've got some questions here from our beautiful, gorgeous, attractive local supporters. And we're going to put something up on Patreon too soon. So if you're a locals member or a patron, send your questions in soon. Mitchell says, while being a rebel in today's culture means upholding Christian values, hasn't the last 2 years proven that humans more often act like sheep and will comply far more than they will rebel? My daughter was born 4 days ago, and my son is 2 years old, and the greatest comfort I have for my children is that the martyrs get automatic entrance through the pearly gates. When I see the insanity of the left and how far we have got to go to reestablish Christendom, I believe that there will be a generation of martyrs between then and now. Question for you is he being hyperbolic? Is he just exaggerating? Should he just calm down? What's your honest opinion on that?
Don't calm down. What more care could you put into the lives of your children? No, I think he's quite right. I think it's very simple. There's the ostrich in the sand syndrome, and I think he's right that most people are sheep right now, and they follow along. My entire not my nuclear family, but my extended family is unbelievably optimistic about dreadful things, and I think that's hugely problematic. I mean, I think Liz Warren is very optimistic. They will not quit fighting for this. They will not go back. They will not return to virtue. So no, I think he's quite right.
Neil, would you mind on Patreon making a post that asks for questions? Yes, so if you're watching right now and you're a patron, you can shoot one over. Wesley Novak says, what do you think will be the backlash to this? Do you see this driving people away from the right? These terms have always been very interesting to me, left and right.
Is he talking about the Roe versus Wade, the Wade decision? What's he talking about?
I think so, yeah. He's talking about that.
Backlash. Oh, there's going to be, I really wanted to talk about that, Wesley. There is going to be maniacal backlash. I think mostly from the left. I don't know what the right would have to do with this, but the indignation that like the Florida law, that they wouldn't teach kindergarten through third graders about LGBTQ and transgender issues. Yeah. That backlash is really interesting because you're saying, hey, let's protect the innocence of children. And these maniacal deformed soldiers saying, no, let's not. They say, let's help them.
Let's pervert them.
Yeah, right. They say it's child abuse if you don't teach them about LGBTQ, sex, and transgenderism to 5-year-olds. I mean, that's insanity. I just can't even fathom how somebody could be so deluded that they think that would be okay to talk to little children about that. But
keep going, Wesley. Backlash.
I don't know what backlash the right. And the terms are so confusing, right and left. I think the Catholic Church is always going to find itself in need of being on the golden mean between the two extremes. And I think the Republican Party left the Catholic Church. Well, probably was never, but it certainly is speeding away from it on many issues. And the woke left is, of course, spiraling into no man's land.
I forget what superhero movie this was. It's probably Spider-Man, where he jumps on the train track and because he's trying to prevent the train from going off.
It from either side.
And he grabs it, and he's kind of like the wooden beams he's standing on keep buckling under him, and he gets pushed gradually over the edge, and he's hanging on.
I think that's The Incredibles.
The Incredibles?
My favorite kids movie.
Yeah, I think maybe it is. It's a great kids movie. But that is what modern conservatism is like. There's this leftist train barreling down the road, and conservatives keep getting pushed back. And they keep conceding ground.
That's right.
And saying false things. Like, speaking about an abusive language, I'd love your take on this. I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't, well, maybe I haven't thought this through enough, but I feel uncomfortable when people use the term biological male.
Yeah.
To me, that's a little like saying traditional marriage.
Yeah.
There's just marriage.
Yeah.
There's not, I mean, you can call it traditional marriage to now distinguish that from the false thing.
Yeah.
You can say biological male, I suppose, but I think is that conceding linguistically, do you think?
That's that. Squish it back on the train tracks.
What do you think?
It's a when did you stop beating your wife question.
Yeah, explain that for people.
Yeah,
Because I love that. I love that question, but I'm afraid people will think that I'm being...
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important question. But all these questions, all these new names of things are so diabolically clever. Like you say something like Black Lives Matter. The very name itself asserts that the people for which it's written don't value Black lives. So it really is a when did you stop beating your wife question and saying, you don't value Black lives, so let me tell you this, Black lives actually matter. And if you said, I know they do, they'd say, no, you don't. Black lives matter. You're like,
and the fact that you say that you do only shows that you don't.
Right. And that's a macroaggression, I believe. But all these names. So in Florida, they have this law. Hey, why don't we protect the innocence of 5-year-olds to 8-year-olds and not talk about all the sexual stuff? And they're like, that's the don't say gay bill. It's like, you're just trying to, they're accusing us of doing what they're doing. You're just trying to abuse speech, and you're harming people as you do. And the same thing with this, what you just brought up. It's the same kind of thing. It's the when did you stop beating your wife? Biological male. Are you? It doesn't need to be said. I guess it does need to be said, but either you are male or female.
Isn't that called the fallacy of a complex question? It's something like
I don't know
that. I mean, it might be more of a colloquial kind of fallacy, but the idea is you can't easily answer that question. When did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah.
You can't say, I never, what?
Right. It's a subterfuge. It muddies the waters.
Yeah.
So what happens is, here's the thing. There are defects, and this is really touchy because people take great offense to the word defect, but we live in scientism, you can say that we have conditioned ourselves into saying, of taking a defect or the exception to the rule and using that as the rule.
Yeah.
So, I mean, something really interesting, we say the number of people who are not XXXY chromosomes is very negligible. It's very small. And it's worth considering, but it's not worth considering as the norm because it's not normal. It's a defect. And it's one we ought to take seriously. It's one we ought to be very empathetic and sensitive about. But because there are certain genetic defects, like the XXY or there's other certain chromosomal defects, these are very serious issues, but they're not rules. They're not the norm. So to say biological male is almost giving into saying, well, this type of thing has now become the norm. And it's really interesting because 20 years ago, if you did a survey, they would say 1.7% of all people identify as LGBTQ. Well, that's increased over the years as a result of all this conditioning and propaganda. And today with Generation Z, I hear it's something like 21% identify as LGBTQ. And so imagine the rationalizations they have to make to explain why that is. They'd say, oh, well, now everybody's being honest as opposed to, or they might say
peer pressure,
or finally they can be themselves, or finally, that serve, love, and know thing. The know part of that is just insurmountable. You can't get beyond it. But here's the truth. Male and female, he created them. It's not just revealed truth in the Bible. It's kind of self-evident. No, it's completely self-evident. 20 years ago, 40 years ago, you could go into any room and with 100% accuracy identify who was what. Nowadays, just because of conditioning and social changes and the marvels of modern medical technology, you just never know anymore, right? So biological male is one of those things to push you back the tracks.
Yeah.
And you acquiesce when you say that. You're acquiescing. You're giving in. And do we have to? Do we have to give in?
No. No, we don't.
We don't have to.
Jacob Cooley says, where do we go from here? What is next for our fight against abortion? And should we expand fostering and adoption services?
Beautiful.
Well, I would say that these are kind of two different issues. I can say that abortion is intrinsically evil and also say I have no interest in adopting or fostering anybody. Now, that's not the case. I'm potentially open to those things.
That's right.
But the fact that I may not be or that you may not be is not an argument against abortion being evil. Do you see what I mean?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
the pro-aborts would say that.
Absolutely. There's this, it's a kind of a trope. They say those who are pro-life don't care about anything after birth. That is a non sequitur. It really doesn't matter. Jacob obviously is a good soul, and it is a really good thing to consider adopting unwanted children. But the two aren't necessarily related. They're not related at all. They're both moral issues, but they're completely separate. So you can say, I'm pro-life, and you don't have to concern yourself with other aspects of a child's life after birth. But the true fact is this, is that those who are pro-life generally are concerned. Very concerned. Whereas those who are pro-death kind of generally aren't.
They kind of say, well, you should have got an abortion or did your contraception break?
That's right. Yeah, I have an aunt. I literally have an aunt. Jacob, I was adopted. I have my aunt Aunt Carrie, and she sat with me a couple years ago, and she said, adopted children, it's just not a great idea. We should abort unwanted children. She told me this, and I think she knows I'm adopted. But
how old were you?
I was in my 40s or 50s. It was recent.
Did that sting or?
Well, no, it was like talking to Liz Warren. It was just that kind of thing. Yeah, it's a sting.
Her lips are moving.
I feel bad for her. No, I feel bad for her. I mean, how do you look at somebody and said, hey, you were adopted, your parents didn't want you. Wouldn't it have been better if you'd been aborted? That way you'd be dead now. You wouldn't be having this conversation. I just thought it was astounding.
Well, you wouldn't exist to contradict her insane opinions, and that would be helpful.
That's right. And I didn't even answer. I said, really? You think we should murder unwanted children? She said, oh yeah, there's too many of them. Whatever. And she's a leftist.
Have you suggested that she jump off a bridge?
No.
I just mean for her, just because you want to respect where she's coming from.
Sure.
You don't want her to jump off a bridge. But if she's so concerned with so many people, that might, I just don't know if she's considered it.
Right. I'm just telling you, Jacob, the leftists probably care a lot less about what happens after birth than those who are pro-life. And I think that's really important to consider. And abandon the idea that because you're pro-life, you have some kind of responsibility to prove to others that you care about welfare or other things after birth, because they're non-related.
I would also say, stop conceding now.
Stop conceding.
Stop it.
Give that up and cut it off.
If you know somebody who's been raped and they conceived, this is obviously a tragic situation. And that rapist, ought to be.
Yes.
I have opinions on what should happen to rapists, but maybe we don't need to go into them, but they should be thrown into jail. Be thrown away at the very least.
That's right.
Okay. But the idea that you then make a situation better by slaughtering this child. So stop conceding. Stop saying things like abortion in cases of rape and incest. Okay, no, it's not. It's completely not.
No.
And then when somebody says, are you going to die on that hill? Say, absolutely.
I'll die on that hill.
I'm going to die on every single hill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But especially that I'm sitting here fantasizing about the way I can just clearly say this. What is wrong with you that you think you can convince a mother to murder her own child in her womb? Seriously, what's wrong with you? I don't have the words to explain how vile that is. And here's the thing. There's no such thing as a woman who murders her own child in her womb, convinced her otherwise, manipulated her otherwise, who is not going to suffer in ways we can't fathom.
I want to share something a little personal. I don't know if I've shared this on the show before, but it's pretty embarrassing. It's kind of like I'm ashamed of it. But before we do that, I want to give you a keto cup. You ever had a keto cup before? Let's just lighten.
I have no
Let's
idea
just lighten the mood for a little bit.
Did I get a little heavy? Did I not succeed? I tried to get it out there. Okay.
No, it was brilliant what you said. I'm about to go even heavier, which is why we need this pause.
Let's do the keto cup.
All right,
I don't know
so
what
this is a keto cup. Now, back in the day when I was eating sugar, right? Which I've been off now for a few 4 weeks or so, 5 weeks.
Nice.
Well, I drink wine occasionally, but you know what I mean, like most sugar. All right, I went to Whole Foods and I said, oh, keto cups, gee, that's a bit bloody interesting. And I ate it and wanted to die because it was that bad.
Wow.
And I thought that death would be easier to endure than this taste in my mouth for another second. That said,
You want to share this with me?
I'm going to give you one. Wow. Are you excited?
I'm excited.
Have you ever
surprised.
had a keto cup?
I've not.
This is not an advert for them, just in case anybody's wondering. But
I need one of those.
I'm not selling it well. But after having been off sugar for a while, I actually kind of like them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
Okay.
Now, but just don't eat it yet. I'm going to do an ad read real
Okay,
quick. All
let's do
right.
it.
I want everyone to check out Hallow, which is a prayer and meditation app that is going to change the way you pray. Especially if you don't pray, this is definitely going to change the way you pray. It is the #1 Catholic app on the App Store right now. Hallow, Hallow. You can sign up for these different things that they have. For example, they've just paid somebody, or I presume they've paid somebody, to read the entirety of Story of a Soul over 21 days.
Wow.
And you can go on and say, I want to be part of this reading or listening group. There's thousands right now waiting for this. My wife and I are going to do it together. You know, it's awesome. It's got sleep stories. It's got examinations of conscience. It'll help you pray the rosary. They've put, I would guess, millions of dollars into this app.
Wonderful.
So if you want to grow in your prayer life, go to hallow.com/MattFradd. Click the link below. When you go there and sign up that way, you'll get 3 months for free. Whereas if you just buy it on the App Store, well, you won't get 3 months for free. So you can try it for 3 months. If you don't like it, you can stop. But I sincerely do not think that you will. Like, I'm pretty convinced you won't. That's how much my wife and I love it, and you will too. Hallow.com/MattFradd. Hallow.com/MattFradd. And they also are now playing my lo-fi music over there, so you can listen to that there as well. Okay.
Boom.
Keto Cup. Ready?
I'm terrified.
Zoom in on his... You can't zoom in. Look at his beautiful face.
And I'm doing this?
Yeah, and be honest, because lying is a sin.
Not bad.
Really?
I expected it to be worse.
I didn't really...
I gave up sugar for Lent, though.
Do you want to try some?
I gave up sugar for Lent.
I'd love to.
Now that I've built it up. Here.
It's not nearly as bad as he says. Thank goodness. Listen, it's not great, but it's not bad.
Oh, I have
And I would be honest. I was
had one?
Yes, I
By
really
mistake?
like these.
Or you like them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to eat baker's chocolate when I was a kid.
was good.
The point is this. If you want someone to like something, tell them how much they'll hate it for at least 5 minutes. Then give it to them.
Really?
Then they'll surprise you. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I don't love it, and I definitely don't hate it. It's pretty good.
Did you want a light cigar? Or no?
I'll wait on that with
Okay.
you. I may need some more whiskey, actually.
It's right behind you. Just pull it on the table.
I emptied it.
There's another one
Okay,
right there.
okay, I'll grab that one. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Did you not see it?
I did. I just didn't know the boundaries. Now I got
No,
it.
you can drink all of that whiskey.
I'll drink the
I
whole
don't
thing.
think you should.
Well, I'm about to. I'm so nearly apoplectic about trying to talk about this.
All right.
It's so important. So,
here's the story. And
what's the story?
The story is this, and I want to preface this by saying I'm, I am ashamed of this, but I think like I was a product of my culture, right? So, and I've shared, and so if there's any children watching, I doubt it. If you're a parent watching this with like a really young child, like that's probably not cool. So stop listening right now. And my wife knows about this, so I feel comfortable sharing it. But when I was about 16, I started dating this girl, God bless her, beautiful young girl, and we started fornicating. And there was a time where she was afraid that she was pregnant. And I remember we were walking back to her house, and she brought that up to me for the first time. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, you just get an abortion, right?"
Right.
And she looked at me with horror, as she should have.
Yeah.
Now, she wasn't a Christian. She wasn't baptized. She didn't go to church.
Right.
But she was rightly horrified by the despicable thing that just came out of my lips.
Right.
That I'll take my pleasure from you, but I will not take responsibility for anything that comes from this love. I've repented of that. The reason I share that, I don't know why I share that. I suppose I share it just to say, we're all sort of products of this society, and we sort of soak in the insanity.
It's the default. It's the default. It's going to be your first reaction where the marital act has not just been separated from marriage, but it's been separated from its primary end of procreation. And the secondary is unification. The third thing, the pleasure that comes from it, has been bumped up to the front, just like that inverted order of to serve, to love, and to know. It's just been inverted, and it's almost the knee-jerk or the conditioned response. It's certainly not educated.
Yeah.
Because it rejected the dignity of that young lady. It rejects the dignity of the act, and it rejects the beauty of the new life.
Maybe part of the reason I brought that up is if you're a woman watching this show and you've had an abortion, I love you. And I don't mean anything, and nor does Steve, that we've been saying in here to condemn you.
Of course not.
You know, like if you're a man and you've fallen at your post and you were a loser like me and you said, let's just go get an abortion. Yeah. This isn't meant to condemn you. It is meant to point out that what you've done is gravely evil and that you need to repent of it. But I guess I share that to say, like, this is not me and Steve, pointing fingers saying, look how pathetic everybody else is except us. No, we're aware of how pathetic we are.
Yeah.
Like, that's the beauty of being a Christian.
Of course.
That's also the beauty of growing in self-knowledge. No matter what people say to you in the YouTube comment section, it pales in comparison to the truth you already know about yourself.
That's
namely,
right.
You're wicked.
Right. You're fallen and you're,
Yeah. So just, we how do we balance this? How do we thread that needle with tremendous love and tenderness to people who have been lied to, who have been told that this is something to celebrate? And there was that still small voice that said, this seems wrong.
Yes.
But the TV and the college professors and the government and the YouTube ads just screamed at you. Yeah. And you were like, okay, that's just whatever, a hangover from my Christian parents or something.
Yeah, no. I was hoping that when I said, who is so evil that they can convince a woman to do that to herself at the cost that it is to her, not to mention murdering an innocent. I want to mention, I saw this commercial. I think it was right when the Mississippi thing was being discussed. And they showed this woman. And they said this woman from Mississippi had to move to a sophisticated state where she had access to abortion.
Sophisticated.
And then when she moved back to Mississippi, she got pregnant, didn't want to be. And this is the bizarrest thing I've ever seen in my life. But this woman said, it was so evil that I didn't have access to abortion. I couldn't even abort my own child when I needed to. And other people were deciding for me. And right next to her was sitting her 7-year-old son. She said, well, I'm glad he's here now, but I really needed that abortion or something. It was just, I watched this thing in horror. And you know who was the victim? Is that poor lady who was convinced that she should have claimed her right to abort that beautiful child sitting next to her, whom she undoubtedly loves in ways she can't even explain. Yeah. Right? And she could sit there and be convinced that she should say, if only I could have aborted you. I know you're here. This is great, but man, I wish I could have aborted you. That's what the commercial was. And to me, it's just, I just sunk. I feel sick. So I'm pretty sure Satan's responsible for this. And that men and women that participate in this, it's just sad. Yeah. It's just pathetic. So I don't want to indict or condemn anybody who's been in this slowly heating water like me. My goodness. Yeah. It's the same exact thing.
And just to kind of round that story out, my girlfriend wasn't pregnant and didn't have an abortion, just to be clear. But God bless her, man. God bless her. And I'm so sorry. I wrote a letter to her apologizing for being a coward, you know, and just for so many reasons. And
I think abortion may be the sin of Adam.
Yeah, really. In some ways.
Spilling the blood of Abel. I mean, it's a violent murder.
And kudos to those powerful women who stand up and talk about how they regret their abortion. I mean, that takes tremendous courage. I love those women. And here's why it takes tremendous courage. If you've done something that's evil, we've all done things that are evil.
Sure.
You then have basically two options. You can admit that it's evil, or you can pretend that it wasn't.
Right.
Admitting the evil is to admit that you've just killed your own child. Yeah. That's a bitter pill to swallow. Yeah. To say, well, actually, it's not bad, and really I'm the victim. You know, it's the patriarchy and the Christians that are... Yeah. That's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So any woman or any man who acknowledges their sin, that takes great courage, and they should be commended, I think.
And to be public about it is a tremendous act of humility in service of others. To say something like, don't be deluded like I was. That's such a beautiful act of humility, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very beautiful. I've seen so many people do that, and it's tear-jerking for sure. It's very beautiful to watch that happen.
I wanted to ask you about, because obviously things like truth, abuse of speech is something you've spoken a lot about and have taught me a lot about. I've learned a lot from you. What's your podcast called that you just started?
Oh yes, I'm finally. Like you mentioned, I think every other Catholic is doing this, and I think it's a good idea.
Human.
Every human on planet Earth is doing this, but I have just decided to go public with everything I've learned over the last 30 years about education, about the nature of truth, and all these things. And I've started a podcast called Finding the Lost, and I'm in an organization called the City of Truth. And can I tell you about that a little bit?
Yeah.
This
isn't the ministry of truth.
No. It's not the ministry of truth, which we will get to in a minute. But from the first time I came on your show a few years ago, I give out my email address, and the first time about 5 people emailed. It was awesome. Beautiful souls asking about education. And every time I've been on since, that number's growing. And I just got to say, I have never received an email from anybody of your audience that hasn't been just a beautiful soul asking real questions. Fabulous. I don't have the words to say. And I've had a few experiences I was in Houston a few years ago, or no, last year. And this guy walks up. I'm in Houston airport not wearing a mask. And some guy walks up with a mask and says, "Are you Steve Rummelsburg? And I saw you. Hey, I sent you an email question." And then I said, "I don't recognize you," because he had a mask on, right? And he took the mask off. I still didn't recognize him. But it was my friend James Prather. And he's in Houston, this awesome guy. And we had a discussion. He's a school teacher. We had a discussion about, he asked me, "Can you reform the Catholic schools? Or no, can you reform the public schools?" And I said no. And we had a great discussion. And then when he recognized me in the airport, we connected again, and it was great. And I want James to reach back out to me, by the way, because I have an opportunity that we can talk about later about teaching in the Catholic schools where maybe we can reform them. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, from there, a bunch of other really wonderful souls has reached out. And one of them is a guy named Evan Amato. And Evan Amato was a listener, and he wrote a question on the last podcast we had asking, "What's your favorite classical book?" Totally unfair question. But he reached out to me by email and said, "Hey, listen, I love what you're doing. I'm an internet marketer. Can I help you?"
Oh, this is the fellow you were chatting with earlier.
This is the guy I was telling you about earlier. And he said, "Can I just help you take your message because I believe it's important? Can I help you get it out there?" And I said, That's a great thing. Thank you so much. This guy was so much charity. And I got to tell you, Evan Amato, he has his own program similar called Rewire the West. And he sees what we see. He says, "Wow, we need to recover the tradition." And he makes these series of videos, and they're really good. Like a series on Dante. He has a series, "How can reading Dante help you sort out your life today?" And you got to watch them. They're really good. He's a very sharp, intelligent. He's brilliant, and he's doing this great work. And you can look him up on
Do you want
Rewire
to
the
put
West.
these links?
Yeah, could you
Neil,
put that link up there for
Rewire
Evan?
the West, and
Yeah.
then yours is Finding the Lost?
Mine is called City of Truth.
City of Truth.
.co.
Okay.
But the thing is that Evan reached out, and of his own gracious humility and giftedness, he just says, "Let me just help you." And he advised me on all the things I need to do to look less ridiculous, to make the content more streamlined, get it out there. So he's helping me do these podcasts. He's helping me. He's going to get me on Twitter, Instagram, and do these things to start making accessible to good families who want to educate their children what it is we can all do to recover the tradition of truth in the Catholic faith and in truth in education. So he's helping me get this all out, and I'm really grateful for it. And it's all charitable on his end. So
wow, bless him.
Yeah, bless him. Oh, and he's in London right now, and he's moving to Italy. But he's a guy that he's young, sharp guy. I would look him up. But he's helped me organize a website called thecityoftruth.co.
I'm going to look it up right now as you talk.
You can look it up. And I'm doing a podcast called Finding the Lost in the City of Truth, where I'm going to bring smart souls on and ask them to discuss with me things that we need to recover. And I want to tell you where this came from, if it's not drawn out too much.
No.
When I was a kid, I think I told this story in here, but when I was a kid, I went to the doctor, and I had to get my tonsils out, and I was in the hospital, and my parents brought me a joke book. It's called the Grin and Giggle book. And there wasn't a single funny joke in it. But there was this amazing picture picture this, a little kid standing out under a lamplight, crying like a baby.
Okay.
And a man comes up and says, "Hey kid, what's wrong?" He says, "I lost my quarter and I'm looking for it." And the man helps him look, and they're looking all over under the street lamp. He said, "Kid, are you sure you lost it here?" And he goes, "No, I didn't lose it here. I lost it over there." And he points to a dark alley. Right? And there's no light. He goes, "Well, why are you looking here?" He goes, "Because there's no light over there." Okay, and I think
that
this
is profound.
Yeah, it's the perfect analogy for today, is that Under the bright lights of technology, we are blinded to what is immaterial. And so we're looking under the bright lights of technology for the things that satisfy the soul, when truthfully, we need to recover what has been lost in the dark. And that's really the ground floor of my entire career of saying, we need to look to the immaterial truths and realities to discover what we've lost, our true treasure. We're not going to find it with technology. You're not going to find it with techniques. And that's what we've been conditioned into, to think that by the knife, by technology, we can fulfill a human soul, and you can't. We have to return to that dark spot and find what was truly lost. So that's the point.
That's really great. Yeah, when I first heard seeking the lost or
finding the lost.
Finding the lost.
Yeah.
When I first heard that, I thought you were referring to lost souls, which I'm sure in part is what you mean. But you're talking about those lost truths.
Yes, just really a principle of truth. They're lost. In the public schools, they're literally not allowed. And I don't think a public school teacher would agree with that. And it doesn't matter if they agree with it. It matters whether or not that's true. The principles of truth, first principles, are not a part of the modern public school. And I don't know if they're part of the modern public university. I don't think so. So that's where we are.
Is cityoftruth.co coming up for you? It's not coming up for me.
No, I don't think it's ready yet. So it's upcoming.
Oh, it's
okay.
upcoming.
And I have a landing page that I sent you a link to. That if you click, and that's the thing. So here's what I'm going to do. If you go to the link that Neil puts up there, and you send your email address, you'll be put on a list where I will put out a weekly newsletter with suggestions about how to recover a principle of truth and invite you into a conversation in a community of souls, of like-minded souls, that want to recover the truth, that want to find lost things. And this is really for parents, for the sake of your children, so that you can try to educate them in a way that's going to prepare them for their true end.
We probably talked about this a lot last time, but when you say that the public schools cannot be reformed, give us the quick pitch on why that's the case, in your estimation.
My estimation, it's because the principles of truth in authentic Catholic education and the principles undergirding the modern public school are mutually exclusive.
Okay.
Now, the first principles, it's undoubtable. So you say, we have the principle of non-contradiction. The public schools rejects that, but forget that. That's the intellectual life. The public schools actually reject that man has a true intellectual life.
When you say the public schools, what does that mean? Who's rejecting it?
Well,
it's not like they have one official manual that says
they have
the law of non-contradiction is...
No. It's not spoken of. It's not addressed. So for example, Bloom's taxonomy. You've heard of Benjamin Bloom.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. This is the gold standard for how we develop lesson plans and how we develop what's called critical thinking skills. Right? And this is hugely problematic. It's a big kettle of fish. But if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, they are intended to be purely quantifiable, measurable outcomes.
Okay.
That alone should signal to you that we're talking about the world of appearances, the world of materialism, right?
Okay.
When we talk about principles of the intellect, we're talking about immaterial things, immeasurable things, qualitative things.
Yeah.
There's not a discussion of the qualitative in the modern school unless the word qualitative is abused and turned into something materialistic. Mm-hmm. Now, it's ironic because the modern school, including John Dewey, he talks about things like conception.
Do us a favor and just destroy John Dewey for us in 5 minutes, because you keep referencing him.
I wish I could. But look, there's a book written by Henry T. Edmonston. If you could post that.
It sounds like all this goes back to John Dewey. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Well, what I usually try to say is that John Dewey is like the clearinghouse for all modern errors. So he took all the errors from the 11th century up to, really from Plato's age, up sophistry, up to the modern age, and he's all of those things. He's the synthesis of all modern intellectual errors or educational errors. He's the poster boy. He was a materialist atheist. He was an experimental psychologist. He believed more in animal psychology than human psychology, but he still had some of the nomenclature vernacular of things like I said, conception. But John Dewey didn't believe man had a soul, an immaterial soul. Or if he did believe that, he didn't care. It didn't matter. So for John Dewey, he said, what's the purpose of the school? The end of the school is for the sake of society. That's the grounding principle for John Dewey. We say the end of the school is for the sake of perfection of the human person, of arriving at truth. That's a radically mutually exclusive end.
Yeah.
So if that's his aim, if he has a materialistic conception of metaphysics and nature, the authentic Catholic school can't share those. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so modern authentic Catholic education is mutually exclusive from the principles of John Dewey. But here's the thing, John Dewey is not the same thing as what people have done with Dewey. Modernists have taken Dewey and reduced that even more and made it a shadow. In fact, Dewey might not even appreciate what they've done with what he's done. Dewey's known as America's favorite philosopher. And I urge you to read his books. But listen, Henry T. Edmondson wrote a book.
You urge people to read Dewey's books?
Oh, sure. So if you know how to read, yes. I'd urge you to read first Henry T. Edmondson's book. He's read all of Dewey. He takes quotes and he explains what you asked me to do in 3 minutes, which I can't do. But it's worth reading that book because Hank T. Edmondson, amazing professor from University of Georgia, he wrote this great book explaining Dewey's thought, which is very difficult to get. If you read all of Dewey's work, he's all over the place. It's very ambiguous. So it is difficult to read his stuff because he's so floaty, but it is worth to read a couple of his works. And if you want me to reference those later, I can find out the 3 that I would recommend to kind of get to know his thought. But I'm not sure it's worth it unless you really want to know the deep roots of what's wrong with modern public education and outcomes-based education.
I was reading one of the Psalms today. I forget which one. It was within the first 20 Psalms. I'm a good Catholic. And it said something like, if the foundations are destroyed, how will the righteous something? How will the right,
That's exactly
it sounds like that's kind of what you were saying about the public schools. Like the foundation has been destroyed.
That's right.
Therefore, it's in principle, one might squeeze through the cracks, but in principle, it's just not possible.
If you follow the theory...
To rejuvenate, I mean.
Theoretically, it's dead in the water. Something interesting happens, though. Practically, good people come and get involved. Even though you deny and reject humanity through this modern system, humanity still comes in.
Yeah.
And it's ironic how even this bankrupt system relies on people's goodwill, even though they reject free will. They believe in determinism. But it still relies on the goodwill to sit in that chair and act like a sheep all day.
Yeah.
Right? And then they also rely on the intellect just enough to acquiesce to the false principles they're trying to get you to serve.
When I first started homeschooling our kids, and there's a lot of pressure on parents, especially from their parents. If they sent you to school, I mean, the language we kind of got from well-meaning relatives was
caustic.
It was essentially you're abusing your children.
That's right.
But I'm not asking you to lie or exaggerate, but you've met my kids.
Yeah.
Aren't they cool?
They're beautiful.
They're just like interesting.
We got to spend a day with them. I mean,
but that's my point. Like, they'd be like bleary-eyed, brain dead.
They'd be zombies if you had put them in the public schools.
Whereas today,
now
my son Peter was like taking you out to see the beehive and just sits down right by the bees because he knows they won't hurt him because they've gotten to know him and he's really gentle with them. And that's glorious.
We did a lot more than that.
Yeah.
We surveyed every plant in the yard. We checked out the bees. He's not scared at all. He got 3 different bugs and fed them to a Venus flytrap.
That's amazing.
The last one was a daddy long-legged spider.
2 Venus flytraps. How cool is that?
He got 3 of them fed.
Did you see them close on it?
Yeah. Oh, they're closed on them now. You go home and look at the planets. 3 bugs are in it, being eaten right now.
Because I wish I could go back to my younger self and just be like, it's okay.
God, just
all you
be
gotta
with
do
your
is just like
kids.
be with your kids and like them and love them. And when you don't like them, try to. It's
them
not
for the
always
sake of
within your
truth.
control to like people
right.
who might be annoying you, maybe because of your own selfishness. That's usually the case with me.
That's right.
But
Your first show, you asked me, can you talk about some of the lies the public tells about homeschooling families? And the reason you said that is because there is a concerted movement. I wish I could. It's so immense. But here's the thing. I believe that the modern public school theoretically is abusive to the human person. And this abusive program says that everything but itself is abusive to the human person. That's just their mantra. And they've convinced, you remember we had that talk with that law professor from Harvard who recommended that they make it against the law to homeschool.
Yeah.
Homeschooling's a threat to the Luciferian agenda. And therefore they've had all kinds of myths.
Somebody tweet that right now. What did you say? That was good.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was so good. Homeschooling
is a threat to the Luciferian agenda.
Hashtag Pints with Aquinas. Do it right now.
Tweet that out.
Hashtag Pints with Aquinas at Elon Musk. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Freedom of speech. So I missed the hashtag part. But look, the whole program, honestly, in the public schools is meant to put a divide between the family and the child, the parents and the child. It's designed for that because to meet the social ends doesn't always line up with what parents value. So there's literally a concerted effort from Dewey on to inculcate the values of the state such that the children belong to the state and no longer to the parents. So that's Luciferian. To take children away from that natural bond of family, which is the gold standard for the building block of civilization, that's evil. And they do it on purpose. Look at what Dunphy wrote. That's meant, countless times have I known about teachers that divide children in terms of value from their parents. The secret transgender program, that you don't have to tell your parents, you can get this. Doing all these things at school. They do surveys at school, social emotional learning. That's what this is all about. It's absolutely insane. And we're not even allowed to say it because when you do, you get attacked. And then now parents, and you know this, because of all the abusive things society has gotten to say to homeschooling parents, people are scared to do it. People aren't sure if they can. They don't think they can. But the first line I said on this show is, if you stayed home and did nothing with your children but just stare into their eyes, that would be infinitely better than sending them to the public schools. And if you look at your family, it's a glowing example of how you guys will not allow the public school agenda to harm your children. And like you said, they're delightful. They're a joy to be with all the time. And that's what I've experienced with most homeschooling
kids.
kids.
They're so good.
They're good kids.
So good. I love them.
They're good.
And when I think that they're not good, it's because of my selfishness.
Sure.
It really is.
That's fair.
That is what we do. I think we project through our selfishness and complain about children. We complain about them on airplanes. We complain about them keeping us up at night. We say all sorts of horrible things about them. Yeah. But what we should be pointing to is our horrible selfishness that leads us to talk about anyone that infringes on our, quote unquote freedom. Yeah.
No, it's a wonderful thing. I do hope to amass a community of souls that wants to reinvigorate their children, and I'm the hugest advocate of homeschooling right now. And here's the thing I'm most surprised about. During the COVID scam, whatever this thing was, the public schools were piped into the homes. This was a satanic mistake. This was a mistake on Lucifer's part. Because when he piped it in the homes, parents had a chance to see the kind of garbage they were indoctrinating their own children with, right? And I think that led to a huge decrease in public school attendees, but not as much as I thought it would. If you sat at home with your kids and you watched what the public schools are teaching and you weren't horrified, then maybe it's a lost cause. But I was kind of overjoyed when they piped all this into the schools. Yeah. And remember, it came out in the news, some guy was like, we should make a deal with parents that when we pipe our public school agenda into the home, that the parents won't watch it and they won't comment on it. Did you see that?
Go to hell.
Yeah, exactly. And who acquiesced? Only a sheep could acquiesce to that.
Yeah.
I trust you with my children, public schools.
Yeah.
No way. It's torturous. So
this might be a good time. We had a super chat a bit ago.
Oh, nice.
From, let me find the name. Mitch Herbig, who's...
You want to speak in? Is that Mike picking you up?
Yeah. So we got a super chat, $25 from Mitch Herbig. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.
He's asking for recommendations for homeschooling curriculums.
That's a loaded, big question. That's a really good question and really important.
You might not agree with everything they're pumping out. I don't know, but I would definitely point people to Homeschool Connections. I think it's .com, because there it's relatively cheap. And my wife is paying right now, and she's going through some classes with Ab0rtion, but you've got people like Joseph Pierce teaching you the Lord of the Rings or literature. You have people like Trent Horn teaching Catholic apologetics. And so you kind of get to pick what you want if you're looking for that extra help.
Yeah.
Because I think that's very intimidating to a lot of parents. Like, okay, all these books, you don't understand. I don't know how to do this without shouting at my child.
Right.
And, do what you can. And I think places like Homeschool Connections can be a really helpful way of introducing your kids to other talking heads saying true things.
Sure. Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I would, right now, Mitch, I would not give you a specific anything because we're so hung up on what do we do? I would suggest that we revert back to how ought we to be. And then we ask different kinds of questions. The entire purpose of getting this group together on City of Truth, Finding the Lost, is that we ask questions like, not which homeschooling program should I use, but look at a homeschooling program and say, what is this? If you have a homeschooling program with great content, but the same form as the modern school with outcomes-based education, then you're just substituting good content for bad content, which is a bonus, but it misses the point. So I would say this, together we ought to get together and discover an authentic education that is not materialistic, that is not grounded in scientism, that is grounded in truth, and checks off all the boxes for what an authentic Catholic education ought to be. And I think that's the ground from which we should start. Ask questions. What kind of program is it? What's their method? What's their pedagogy? Those are the things we need to recover. So instead of saying particular programs, I would rather discuss those aspects of an authentic education, and that's precisely what I'll be doing over the next few years.
I think one of the things that makes it so difficult to talk about the things we're talking about is we want to say things boldly, and we want to say them pointedly and accurately.
Yeah.
But we don't know who we're talking to.
Right.
And so we don't just want to preach to the choir here.
Right.
Right? Why, I mean, if we were preaching to the choir, why are we even saying what we're saying? Why don't we just go home? So presumably there are many people watching right now who are thinking, this is easy for you to say, or you don't understand, or how do we convey this message that you want to convey, but in a compassionate way that takes into account. And I'm not saying you're not being compassionate. I'm just how people hear things is different, right?
Sure.
How do we share these truths in a way that people can actually hear and not get immediately defensive about? Because homeschooling is bloody difficult.
It's very
Parenting is bloody difficult.
Sure.
It's difficult being tired and waking up tired and being in a house that may not be as ordered as you'd like it to be, and then to do this with children who have different temperaments. Some of them are more stubborn than others.
True.
What do you say to parents who are putting up some resistance here, or some people who are about to be parents who are about to realize how difficult it is?
Yeah. No, I have two comments on that. Well, first of all, I definitely preach to the choir because at the moment the choir doesn't know how to sing. So we really have to preach to the choir. And here's the other thing. If there's a family without faith, without a belief in the transcendent reality of creation, the order of the cosmos, that makes it exponentially more difficult to clue into what we're talking about here. So I don't want to be uncompassionate or non-sympathetic at all, because I really would like to. I'd like to preach to not just the choir.
Yeah.
But the choir right now needs to learn how to sing, and so I'm really worried about the choir, and I'm worried about the choir first. And then the choir, together we can figure out how to be compassionate to those outside of the choir. I know that sounds terrible. I think it sounds terrible. I would like to answer specific questions, and I hope I didn't come off as rude to Mitch. I thought Mitch's question was awesome.
You didn't come off rude at all.
Oh, I hope not.
I wouldn't lie to you because I think lying is a sin.
I'm trying to be direct.
And I'm being direct too. But I think
like
sometimes it's like, I don't know, I see this on YouTube, right, where people come out and they just say it, and they don't seem to care how people hear the thing they're trying to say, and so the thing that appears so important to them isn't ever heard because we come off. I might come off.
That's right.
Certainly I do. Too abrasive,
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
All night I've been saying, oh my gosh, the first time I came here, my wife's best advice was, when you're on the Matt Fradd show, don't speak. Just don't say anything. That's going to be the least offensive.
That would have been terrible.
Yeah, well, it was good advice because I was like, wait, should I say that? Because it's the most common thing in the world that I try to say something to, and it will offend somebody who's been conditioned in the serve, love, and know. It'll be offensive.
Well, I think unless you wanted to finish your...
Yeah, no, I just want to say that I always think about how to say things clearly, and I'm not good at it. You know, I'm a school teacher who knows I'm not a good school teacher, but at least I know that. Most school teachers who are not good don't know they're not good, and that's to me that's devastating. So I am so with you, and I wish I were more talented or more articulate or more educated myself. I was brought up in the outcomes-based education. I'm as deformed as the next guy. Yeah. I just believe God gifted me with a revelation of truth about the womb of a true education, which is love. Yeah. And so the only people in this age who I think really even have a chance are parents who understand how they love their children. That womb of love is the key to it all.
Amen. Is that better over here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd be interested to see the growth in homeschooling over the last year or two.
I would too.
It's going to be cool.
Guys?
We can look it up.
Please. No, I think it's grown.
I'm
quite a
sure
bit.
it has. That's my point. Why aren't you smoking this cigar? You told me to get you a cigar. When do you plan on smoking that?
I'm very soon. I'm this close.
You're
I
just
am
getting
this
ready.
close.
Isn't that a good cigar that I just shared? Neil, do you like it or no?
I do. I love it.
All right, so I want to.
Next time you're monologuing,
This
I'm
is
gonna do
not an advert. Here, this is not an advert. It really isn't. I don't know these people at all. But this is my favorite cigar. For those who are wondering, it's a new group called Southern Draw, and it has all. It says "All glory to God." Is that what that means? Solely
only the glory to God.
only glory to God, or to God be the glory. Something like that. Anyway, it's beautiful. These are my favorite cigars. Southern Draw.
Southern Draw.
I'm smoking Jacob's Ladder, but they're all really, really the best I've had.
Awesome.
So come on.
Yeah. Well, do you have a monologue in front of you where I can try to light this?
Oh, is that what you want to do?
I'm
Okay,
just
grab
writing.
that.
Oh, here it is. Okay, you got it.
All right,
Okay,
and let
good.
me tell people about Exodus 90, which is a 90-day ascetical program for men that will help you be a really better Christian, See my great education coming to bear. Exodus90.com/Matt Fradd. Always forget.
It's in the link, yes. So /Matt.
This is awesome. Basically, for 90 days, you take on a bunch of ascetical practices that you usually wouldn't and probably don't want to. Things like taking cold showers, not snacking between meals, not having alcohol, okay? But you're doing this with a small group of men, and it's hard, man. I'm not going to lie, it's really hard, but it's terrific. Exodus90.com/Matt. Click the link in the description below and check them out because they're terrific. They also have like week Exodus 90s if you just want to kind of kickstart your spiritual life. Check them out. They've got a great app and they're doing great work. Exodus90.com/Matt. Was that long enough? This is great.
Perfect
Now we're
timing.
just in
Thank
a
you.
smoky room.
Thank you so much. That was essential.
When I built the studio, when I paid somebody to build the studio, I wanted it to feel like a pub.
Yeah.
Like a little nook.
Yeah.
I don't know
it does.
It's kind of just fun, isn't it?
It does. It's great.
This is fun.
I
This
love
is so
being
much
here.
better than virtual.
Honestly.
Virtual's fine, but this
Yeah.
is better. This is this.
We've done a bunch of
It's
virtual.
human.
And it's
human, right? It's
And those weren't nearly as fun as this. This is 1,000 times better. No, the setting's great, and having Neil and his girlfriend here.
Neil and his
Awesome.
girlfriend.
Neil and Shayla.
Shayla. Neil and Shayla back there.
I think you
I didn't
meant-
want to get it wrong.
You meant Shayla and her boyfriend.
right,
I think.
exactly.
Shayla and her boyfriend. That guy
Joe
behind the
Biden's
computer. Yeah. Yeah. The better half.
Brian Ahern asks, and this is a great follow-up to questions about curriculum. What's that plural of curriculum?
Curricula.
Curricula, thank you. Do you know of a resource that lists good books for children of different ages? Here it is.
I do.
Here's your freaking resource.
I do.
It's going to be a clip for the ages. Can I start?
Oh, yeah.
Because your answer will be far better
yeah,
than
yeah.
mine and no doubt more lengthy. And
Yeah.
you're going to want to keep that
Go
little.
ahead. Go ahead.
So, Mother Goose? No. Not Mother Goose. What?
Grimm's.
Well, Grimm's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to get there. But what's the kind
Mother
of
Goose is
like? Is that? Did I get the name right?
I think so.
Mary, quite contrary.
Yeah. Mother Goose.
Start with Mother Goose for your little kids, even for your little older kids. You start there. It's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Little Miss Muffet, that sort of stuff. Start there.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Then move on to the Grimm's brother fairy tales. These are fantastic. Don't get the edited versions. Get the version that when you're reading it, your wife looks at you with tremendous concern and wondering if you should not stop because it's way too violent. And you just look at her and whisper, submit. And then you keep reading. No, sorry, I'm just joking. But yeah, no, I definitely, it's so good.
You're on the right
And there's
track.
some really good Brother Grimm's fairy tales
joyful
up there.
tales,
So
aren't they?
start there. Start there with kids. Why should people read the fairy tales?
Start with the fairy tales. Fairy tales. As Chesterton said, it's better to read tales told by a people than tales told by one madman. And that alone is worth the price of admission. These folk tales, and there's all kinds of them. I had this great book called The Monk's Tales. The monks wrote it. I don't know who wrote it, but it's 100 tales that are they're just really all good.
Have you ever read Russian fairy tales?
No.
These things are crazy. That plate there is a plate of a Firebird
yeah.
and a Russian fairy tale.
yeah.
These are nuts. They're beautiful.
Yeah. All the
I'm
culture's folk tales are beautiful.
I'm going to read you one before you leave back to California.
Please.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
They're
Can't
so
wait to.
good.
No, I love them. There's so many folk tales to read. And I love the myths. I like the Greek myths, the Norse myths, all those great myths. But before you read them, you better learn how to read a myth. Before you read the fairy tales, you better learn how to read a fairy tale. So I do
Why?
have.
Why not just read it?
Oh, yeah, no, just read it.
After 3 glasses of beer.
Here's why you should learn to read myths before you read myths, is because the modern world has so much disdain and disrespect for mythology to the point where they don't even know what the word myth means. Look up myth in the dictionary. It means like a lie.
Yeah.
And then ask a sophisticated teacher, what's a myth? They go, oh, it's a story told before they learn something scientific to explain the thing they were telling about. Simply not true. Simply not true.
So what's a myth?
So a mythos, is the crossroads where the transcendent meets the temporal. And in the transcendent reality of the myth, you can encounter such beautiful and profound truths about the nature of the world and about the nature of the human person and about the nature of human relationships to the transcendent. Super important. Now, to do much better than that, you can look at C.S. Lewis. He wrote a book called An Experiment in Criticism. And in that, he has 6 profound truths about the nature of myths. Read that alone. If you understand what he's saying there, then delve into the myths with your children. If you don't understand, then let's get a little platform together and understand what he means by that. I really think you got to learn how to read the myths before you read the myths with a skeptical modern eye and you think that they're just explaining something scientific. Again, it's that inverted order.
I see. When you're talking about myths, you're talking about like Greek mythology.
As
opposed to fairy tales.
Yeah, fairy tales aren't myths per se.
Right.
Yeah.
So people can read the fairy tales, but you're saying understand how to read the myths.
But we ruin the fairy tales in the same way. We reduce the fairy tales to didactic tales, which they're not. Because you're right, just read them to enjoy the story.
Everybody who's watching right now, stick around, because at some point we are going to read a fairy tale together.
Okay,
we're going to pull this open and we're going to read one. Or if my battery dies, we're going to make Neil read us a fairy tale. It's going to be fantastic.
Neil and Shayla are
fairy tales are fantastic. All right, so that's good.
Yeah.
So and here's what I love about the fairy tales too, right? As a father who probably has ADD, who has children who probably have something like that, I don't know, or let's just say they're beautiful, energetic children. Okay. A fairy tale is something you can commit to, right? Like I can't.
How so?
Well, I can't tell you how many times I've said we are going to read the Lord of the Rings, and we actually did that. I read the entire Lord of the Rings to my kids over the course of a year, and I'm proud of that. But more often than not, I'll be like, we are going to read, and then we read for the first night, and the second night something happens, and the third night I forget about it, and then we just never read it. But if it's like we have dinner and we like, you know, sit down with the kids, my wife brings me a beer, we light some candles, you can read a fairy tale in 10, 20, 30 minutes. You can commit and finish.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And the kids love it. And my kids, and look, my kids are just like your kids. Like if I let my kids, they would only watch stupid superhero movies constantly. Like they're just like your kids. Don't get the wrong impression. Yeah. I remember before I was into this whole thing, I used to think that people like Scott Hahn's kids probably were kneeling on broken shards of glass while praying the rosary. Like we're all the same, okay? Right. But my kids love the fairy tale, and they keep saying more. Like, one more, just one more.
That's right. That's right.
So that's what I mean by.
And let me just add to that. My daughter Tommy, who's 20, and my daughter Kaya, who's 22, literally to this day, when they come home, we sit down and read fairy tales together.
How does that work? Do you suggest it?
I might hint at it. They might hint at it. But we'll sit down together, and they it's like a magnet. They're like, sit down on either side, and we read a tale. You can ask them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm probably embarrassing my daughter Tommy at Wyoming Catholic, but it's a true story, and they love it. They just love it. We still read them, and why wouldn't we? They are captivating.
Shayla, I just realized I didn't offer you a cigar. I'm so sorry.
You know what?
You are welcome to go take one. Would you like one?
That's really nice, but I'm okay.
Yeah, you can share with Neil. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
But I do have a go-to. I mean,
did I tell you I might have ADD?
No.
What'd you say?
Never came up, Matt.
That dog has a fluffy tail. Remember that? Now I'm quoting The Simpsons. That man is my exact double. That dog has a puffy tail. Here, Puff. Here, Puff. No?
I've never seen that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, look it up.
I'm glad we're on that topic. The Simpsons.
You were talking about fairy tales.
I've had a lot of people reach out, and this was great. This last time I was on, dozens, maybe hundreds of people reached out.
That's why when people offer their email address, I'm like, wait.
Yeah, but luckily they're all good people. And they're all asking basically similar questions. And one of the big ones is, give me a list of resources. And I hesitate to do that because, like I said, to learn how to read the myths before you read them is important. So it doesn't make sense to read myths with people who are skeptical, modernist, materialists.
Well, see, I just had my son read through that big, beautiful book of the Greek myths with the beautiful illustrations that you suggested.
Yeah, dollars.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And my son read them and he was 13. and loved them. So I'm not sure if he should have read a book about how to read them.
No, he should have. No, he should have. No. And I'm talking to parents about saying, how do you frame this? How do you invite them in to talk?
Yeah.
What kind of questions do you ask about the myth?
Because you brought up something earlier, and didn't my son look at you and say, are you referring to the demigod something?
Yeah, when was that? Today?
That was today. But I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about because my son is better educated than I am.
Well, they're into the right things because years ago you asked, what do I read with them? And then you go to those stores and buy those great old books. I watched you do it. It's good. Yeah, it's good.
Speaking of your son being better educated than you, we have a super chat, which is
from my son. He's probably watching.
No, it's from Christopher T. And they're saying, I graduated from high school 4 years ago, but I would have loved to have gotten a classical education. Are there any resources for adults wanting to learn classical education?
Yeah, sign up for my newsletter. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because I balk at the word classical education because now there's a neoclassical education movement. They're all guys of goodwill. They're good souls. But what they've done, unfortunately, is they've taken great content and they've pushed it into this modern pedagogy of outcomes-based education. And this would be something like what I mean about learning how to do these things before you jump into the right content.
I asked you this once upon a time. I'm going to ask you again. Could I pay you? I'm going to ask you on the air to do another series of the great books or the good books.
Yes.
Let's say it's like a 5-part series, something like that. Could you do that?
I would do that. In fact, I started making, I made a course called
So the reason
Logic.
I bring that up now is if you want to support us over on Locals or Patreon, we'll start releasing these whenever you can get them to me.
Okay.
Because you are so gifted and you have so much to say that I feel bad limiting you to like 3 minutes, sum up Dewey and why he sucks.
Right.
So if we did that, then I'll release that to them. But then how else can they connect with? What's this newsletter? How do they get this newsletter?
Well, this newsletter, I think the link that Neil puts up just connects you to a newsletter where I will provide kind of weekly just ideas to think about.
That's beautiful.
And is
the link in the description? Click that link. Sign up to the newsletter.
Every week I'm going to send something else, and you're welcome to respond to it. It's free. Just get involved in this conversation for the sake of your children, for the sake of your family. And a while back, Matt, you had me do that course on. Yeah. I had never made anything.
And that's available on Patreon right now.
That's available on Patreon.
I'll put it on Locals soon.
I'll tell you what, though. I was absolutely terrified when I hit record and play on that thing, and I was just paralyzed. I literally called you, Matt. I said, Matt, when I hit record, I'm literally frozen.
Which is funny because you're terrific, in live conversation.
Ooh, well, it's pretty scary, right? I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who'd rather die than speak in public. And then
I'm someone who would rather die than be in an elevator with somebody. But I can do this until the cows come home. Yeah.
Well, I can't even do this. But when I made those videos, I scripted them out word for word, and they probably weren't bad.
Yeah.
But the delivery was terrible, and I had my iPhone.
Do it again.
We'll do it again. Well, here's what I've done since then. The Scully sisters, they're fabulous. They asked me to make a logic course, course on an introduction to logic.
Beautiful.
And it's about a 16-week program that I made with little videos. And the flaw in it is that it was just too packed in. I gave like 30 years of everything I learned in 2 weeks, and it was great. But I started scripting a grammar course, which is exactly what you're talking about. When I say grammar, I mean letters, I mean literacy. I don't mean parts of speech, which is subsumed by grammar, but authentic grammar as a liberal art is truly literacy, and it bleeds into logic and coalesces into rhetoric. So the three liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, are a single thing having to do with language. But you have to go back and recover, what is language? What is human speech? You have to answer the question, is language conventional or is it natural? Is it God-given or is it completely man-made? These are really important questions before you can really even discuss literacy. This is what I'm trying to say. So I've been in the process of developing a grammar course that really is about learning to read the great books. Because now we're to the point where you could read the great books and get nothing from them. Remember that great quote from Screwtape Letters? The demon Screwtape says, "Only the learned read great books, and we have so dealt with them that they of all people are the least likely to get anything from them." This is the problem. And we are devolved remnants of what the mind molders have conditioned us to do. They've conditioned us into illiteracy. And that may be off-putting, but I make the contention that most of us are formally illiterate, even if we could read 1,000 words a minute with the Evelyn Wood speed reading program. So I really mean that we really need to go back and discover what's the nature of language. Is it natural? Is it conventional? Is it God-given? Is it man-made? Once you answer that, then you can move on to parts of speech. This is directly tied into Aristotle's categories. The 10 categories are the true ground of the parts of speech. They're nouns and verbs. Their adjectives, adverbs, clauses, all those things are implicit in this order of the cosmos that Aristotle would help us see. So I would love to go and finish that course and make it presentable, especially to Matt Fradd fans, because it's the best audience, right? It truly is.
How old were you when you first started memorizing poetry?
I'm going to start next year. That's my plan.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
I'm on it.
how old is what I asked? No,
I'll be getting my art card and then
because I never memorized it as a kid.
Yeah.
It was like,
neither.
why would you?
Gosh, me neither.
It's so sad.
I went to UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. Got a degree in history, and I can say this: I graduated with a degree in history after 7 years at university, having never read a single book.
You must know some poetry.
I'm going to jump right in.
You must know a poem.
I don't know.
You don't.
Don't know.
Am I like?
No.
I didn't mean to just bring this up.
This is
so
embarrassing.
strongly.
This is public.
Here, I want to ask everyone watching to tell me who wrote this poem.
Say it.
I know like 3 or 4 poems. That's about it. I really like, it's maybe not a great poem, but it means a lot to me because it was one of the first things I memorized, and I was about 21 or something. And I don't know who wrote it. And I've typed these words into Google and cannot find it.
Let's hear it.
O you many unassaulted cities, have you not longed for the enemy to overtake you, until in hopelessness and hunger you receive him? Look from your balconies. There he stands as far as the eye can see, and you know he can hold out longer than you. The one who will overtake you is working in silence. Wow. I love that.
Who wrote that?
I don't know. That's my point.
Somebody out there. Who wrote that? Neil? Shayla?
I don't know.
Someone tell me who wrote that.
only ever heard
I will
Matt
send you
Fradd's.
a free beer stein.
That's the thing, though, that we've decided is if no one claims the quote in 2 years, then it's
It's
yours.
mine.
You
That's the
wrote that.
thing. I have a lot of things.
beautiful. By Matt Fradd.
Here's why I love that quote, and I don't know what the author intended by it, but to me, the unassaulted city is the one who has not yet opened himself to God and to divine grace.
Right.
And the one, and you stand from your balcony, there he stands as far as the eye can see, and you know he can hold out longer than you. Have you not longed to be overtaken, until in hopelessness and hunger? Like instead of like pretending you've got it all together and running on your own stuff.
So beautiful.
I love that poem.
That's right where I am too. And can I add to this that this St. Augustine's City of God is the inspiration for what we're calling now the City of Truth. Because the City of God. It's this fabulous book that nobody
you're
reads.
the one who told me to read it. And
Yeah,
I read
told you to read it.
I read about, I don't know, like 40 pages and
I was
then
going
stopped.
to say, nobody reads it. Nobody reads it. But if we knew
I
all
loved
those,
what I read, but I stopped
it's
because
so
I'm a
beautiful.
loser. Yeah.
But when you get to books 11, he explains his thesis. It's very short and simple. It's very true. It's so profound. He says there are 2 kinds of love. There are 2 loves. And these 2 loves form 2 different cities. It says there's the city of God and the city of man. In the city of God, the citizens love God to the contempt of their fallen selves. And that constitutes citizenship in the city of God. When you say, I abandon myself to the will of God, you are a citizen in the city of God.
So a woman who finds herself pregnant and chooses to disobey Elizabeth Warren's dogmatism because she knows it's wrong to pay a hitman to kill her child.
That's right.
She, in a sense, chooses a setback, as it were. It appears such.
That's right.
For the good of God and the
For
good
the good
of
of
his
truth,
son.
for the good of human life. And
Whereas
dignity.
someone like Lizzie Warren,
Well, let me say the second one. The other kind of love is love of self, such that you inevitably have contempt for God, because God would limit your freedom.
and I mentioned this to you over dinner. Thomas Aquinas, when he talks about the effects of lust, one of them is hatred of God for that exact reason.
Exactly right. When you assert yourself as the primary thing, you must have contempt for God, because he would have you perfected. And because of your fallen nature, you would have yourself vicious. And that's the city of man.
Wow.
That's the city of man. And so I've taken that image and said, can we reduce that to education? The answer is yes. There are 2 loves, and out of those 2 loves are formed 2 schools. The school of truth is where man loves the truth to the contempt of his own opinion. The school of man, the modern public school, is the man who loves himself to the contempt of truth. So if you simply invert that order and make truth your end, then and only then can you begin to recover an authentic education.
Matt, I have some bad news.
Uh-oh.
The quote has been attributed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
The poet is. Let me look for the name.
Oh, no.
No, that's fantastic. Did you come up with that?
Man, I thought that was
Somebody
yours.
Somebody in the chat.
Oh.
It was Adrian Mercedes.
Adrian
Rainier Maria Rilke.
Oh!
Who's that? Is he terrible? He's probably
No,
awful.
he's a German guy?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
could you find me that poem? I want to know if I actually memorized it correctly. Can you look that up? And
right. Yeah. You want me to send you a link?
yeah,
You
do
owe
it,
somebody
do it over
Bierstein.
Slack. And this fellow, if he doesn't have a Pints with Aquinas Bierstein yet, tell him to write to, and not everybody do this. Please, God, don't do this. I don't know how else to give him this Bierstein. Write to assistant@mattfradd.com. You can write to our producer, Melanie, and we'll be sure to get you a free Bierstein for being so cool.
That's
Now,
awesome.
if we get like 10 emails from Adrian or whatever, it's going to be difficult. So
10 Adrians.
don't suck, people. Don't
Adrian
lie.
Mercedes, that's awesome.
You know, to that, while you're looking up that poem, I want to read this quote because I freaking love it. This comes from Chesterton. There was a time when men believed in the truth and doubted themselves. Now we live in a time where men believe in themselves and doubt the truth.
That's the tagline on my email.
Is it?
If you sign up, that will be at the bottom of the email that comes back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it, in a nutshell.
I'm so pleased that we found the...
Yeah, there
Oh,
were
me
two
too.
other people who said it before him also. So.
Oh, great.
Oh, my
Did they all get?
No, just one of them.
We'll figure out who said it first.
No, too late. I've already decided. I've already told this guy to write. I can't just, That's on you, Neil, because you gave me his name first.
Yep.
So if anyone's got a problem, they can blame Neil. Or they can go to mattfradd.locals.com, become part of our community, and we'll just send you a Bierstein.
Yeah, do that. Do that.
Have you found the poem?
Yeah, I sent it to you over Slack.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
not?
All right, we're going to read it.
Read it.
Here. Okay, and then we'll see if it's... Here.
Did you find it?
See how close you were.
Listen.
Telephone game.
What'd you say, Neil?
It's in Slack. You've sent it to yourself because you're signed in on here.
Oh. Text. Oh, I don't have internet on my phone. So this
You
won't
know on
work.
Slack?
I have Slack, but you sent me a link.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
cut and
Yes.
paste it into Slack? This makes for great live streaming.
Yeah.
But see, the thing is, we are like an hour and a half, 2 hours in now, so
Oh, no.
it doesn't matter at this
No,
point.
no, we have
They're
tons
here
more
for
to
the
talk about.
long.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
here. They're here with us.
If you're here now, you're not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere. So look,
Yeah.
we're going to be here for at least another hour. Crack open a beer, take a seat, take it easy. You deserve it, or maybe you don't, but do it anyway. Put your feet up, and you just sent it to us.
Awesome.
All right. So this is very interesting. Okay. All of you undisturbed cities, haven't you ever longed for the enemy? Oh, mine's way better. I'd like to see you besieged by him for 10 endless and ground-shaking years, until you were desperate and mad with suffering. Finally, in hunger, you would feel his weight. He lies outside the walls like a countryside, and he knows very well how to endure longer than the one he comes to visit. Climb up on your roofs and look out. His camp is there, and his morale doesn't falter, and his numbers do not decrease. He will not grow weaker, and he sends no one into the city to threaten. That's right, I remember this bit. He doesn't come to threaten, to promise, or to negotiate. He is the one who breaks down the walls, and when he works in silence. So who is this poet? Where's he from?
He's German, right?
Okay, so
what's his years?
mine must have come from a different translation. That's clearly the only reason mine must have sounded. It wasn't because of my lack of memory or whatever. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, he's a famous poet. I'm
Power
trying to
of
remember
God,
where
man.
I've read his other work. I have one of his books.
Do you have a favorite poem, even if you haven't memorized it? Should I stop pressing against
Well,
this?
listen, my illiteracy is embarrassing. I've never been...
Dude, you could put me on the spot.
I've
I
never
know
bragged
nothing.
about being literate, but I have discovered that I was illiterate, which really led me down the path of trying to learn how to read.
Yeah.
And I have this. I've said this here before, I think, but a definition of literacy is to breathe life into dead words on a lifeless page and bring words to life such that you enter into the world of the author.
Yeah.
This is the thing to do. We do the opposite in the world. We drag the author into our world, put him under a microscope, and criticize him. It's the height of illiteracy.
Yeah.
You become the arbiter and interpreter of truth.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of the city of truth. It's the city of man. It's a really bad idea. So I'm really, really caught up on learning how to read, learning how to listen to what the author's telling you and enter into his
Because
world.
he may know something you don't.
Just might.
Whereas if
Just
you're
might.
interpreting it through your own
Yeah.
prejudices. You're just
You're in your own echo chamber.
Yeah. Hey, I never offered you. Do you want some wine? Yeah, let's do it.
I gave Neil my cup.
No, because you're drinking whiskey.
Yeah, I'm drinking whiskey.
Here, you take this and just finish it off there. We got a question here. Monica, she says, I encourage everyone to read about Bernard Nathanson and particularly his book, The Hand of God. He was one of the DRS. What's that? That led to the success of Roe versus Wade. Doctors, maybe? His transition from atheist abortionist to a devout Catholic. I remember listening to this fella. Yeah, is harrowing. Let's see what else we got here.
Read that.
Veronica says, while changing laws goes a long way, the only thing that will stop the sacrifice of the innocent will be a change of hearts.
Yeah.
The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord.
Yeah.
Lord, have mercy on us.
Yeah.
Gabe says, is there any hope that a non-religious majority of people will be convinced that abortion is evil? It seems like you could justify any action when society or yourself sets your moral compass.
Yeah. Great comments.
It's a question too.
Yes.
Do you think an atheistic majority can come to hold the view that abortion is reprehensible?
No, I think Monica and Veronica were really getting at it. If we look at the law itself, it's rotten fruit from a rotten tree. And it's actually not very valuable for us to try to change a law when we have a root problem. So I think all three are on the right track. You say, listen, we have to change in the hearts and minds of people by inverting the order of our learning from conditioning to education and say, we look at the roots. So what we're trying to do by changing the law is we're trying to essentially take an apple tree, take the apple and say, we need this apple to be something different. And that's impossible. We need to go to the roots. We need to deracinate viciousness and evil.
Oh, I don't know what that word means, but I want to.
Oh, deracinate means to take out from the roots.
Ooh.
Racination is
Like
roots.
yeah.
Like the word radical.
Radical.
Yeah. We need to go to the roots.
Deracinate.
Deracinate means like to pull weeds out. Pull up from the roots. See, the problem is a root problem. That's why it's almost fruitless to say, well, now that the entire world is conditioned into murdering innocents, it's fruitless to change the law. When the root says, kill innocent people, it's good.
But it's not useless, right? Isn't that what you just said? It's useless to change the law? It's not.
Well, it's as impossible.
If it were useless, you wouldn't be cheering. You wouldn't be happy about this potential decision.
Well, I think that this decision is a different fruit from a different root. There's no way we're changing the fruit. Look at Liz Warren. I mean, how much headway are we going to make with Liz Warren? We had her in a room today. If we had to talk, I would be charitable to Liz Warren if she were here right now. It wouldn't be a good conversation. It's just going to be really difficult. But we need to go to the root of the matter, change hearts and minds about life.
I agree with that, but also don't you think that the law is a teacher to some degree, and that we should be implementing just laws?
Absolutely.
Right. So it's not. And maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but it's not useless to institute. Like, I would like to see pornography illegal, to be made illegal.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen in a democratic republic where the majority of people think that it's absolutely fine.
I don't know if I'm saying useless. I'm saying impossible. It's different.
Impossible to what?
Not useless. Change the law. It'll be a reflection of what good souls think.
Okay.
The law that corresponds to natural law is a good law. The law that contradicts natural law is a bad law. That's just the way it is. The law itself is less profoundly important than the hearts and minds of souls that have principles of truth.
Yeah.
So if you change the law, but you have a populace that is completely disconnected from natural law, then it's just the thing they're going to do subversively, right?
Yeah.
So this is why it's important so we're caught up in thinking that we can change a law which says we can change a societal structure.
Yeah.
You can't. A mom and dad can form their child such that they have principles and roots of truth, and if enough families do that, the new laws will correspond to natural law. I'm just saying it's impossible to change a fruit, but we ought to recognize the difference between fruits and roots, and I'm excited that this is happening, but it really is just rearranging the deck of the Titanic.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And what's tough though is you got to get down to the.
You got to get down to the roots.
It's bottom up, not up, down, always.
Yeah, well, it's Confucius said this. This is amazing. Confucius says, the world thinks that it's the good city that makes the good neighborhood, that makes a good family, that makes a good man. He says it's the opposite.
Oh.
It's the good man that makes the good neighborhood, that makes the good city, that makes the good nation.
That is brilliant.
Confucius is brilliant.
What a dude.
Yeah, what a guy. What a guy. He's he had the inverted golden rule. Don't do to other people what you don't want them to do to you.
Yeah.
That's profoundly beautiful.
And pragmatic.
And pragmatic and practical. So we ought to stop inverting the order of thinking we can change a law when what we really need to do is help a human soul ground themselves
in
the truth, in virtue. That's it.
Yeah.
It's about virtue, and it's one person at a time. It's one dad and mom to their children.
Exactly, and it seems to be the opposite of what our fear is regarding big government.
That's right.
The kind of tyrannical overreach.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's happening. But you have subsidiarity that exists as a principle of truth and exists regardless of what everybody says about communism or what everyone says about structural racism or structural. These things are absurd. These things called structural racism and structural culture, it's just culture. That's all it is. It's the rotten fruit of rotten trees, or it's the good fruit of good trees. That's all it is. Right? So we need to get a perspective back on the inverted order of things. Isaiah's woe to him that calls black white and white black.
Yeah.
We need to stop calling white black and white black white.
Black white, yeah.
Have to stop that. So I'm not saying useless. I'm saying impossible.
Well, okay, and yet you're saying we should try to change laws.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I am so happy.
It's just we shouldn't expect that the change of law will result in an immediate change of heart for the majority.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, the law is going to truly change. The conventional law is going to truly change when we recover the gold standard of the building block of civilization, which is the family.
Yeah.
Mom and dads, love your children. Men, love your wives.
This is what I mean. Yeah. I don't know if it was Christopher West's commentary on St. John Paul II's love and responsibility, or if Weigel had it to said this, something to the effect of, as the family goes, so too goes society. I think that was John Paul II. But you kind of follow it down, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, what's the fundamental building block of society? And I don't know if we would say family anymore. We would.
We have to.
We would.
Well, de facto, it is. But no, the modern world wouldn't say that. The modern world would say the individual is the building block.
So if you would say the family, you would say, well, what's the kind of like nucleus of the family? It's man and wife. And what's that one act that they engage in that would be inappropriate to engage in with somebody else? It's not doing the dishes in their house. It's not even sharing a bed with the person. I mean, there could be certain instances where it's appropriate to share a bed with, say, one sibling or even as an adult. Sure. It's clearly the marital act. Right. And so if you deform, thwart, pervert the marital act, that's right, you've done away with marriage and family, and
that's what we're talking about here. Absolutely.
Which is why there is such wisdom and brilliance in John Paul II's emphasis on this, because it is interesting that we're all moral. Well, Lizzie Warren is a moral relativist when it comes to things sexual, but I presume she's quite objective about insider trading and terrorism and other things that don't involve men and women. But when it involves the sexual act, it's like multiple choice. It doesn't matter at that point. But that's the ground floor that you're messing with, that you're destroying.
Lizzie's a moral idiot. And I want to say that in a...
and what do you mean by idiot? Because I want people to realize you're not just using a pejorative term.
No. This isn't name calling. This isn't name calling. Idiot, in the Greek term, means somebody who's outside the boundaries of reality. That's the term that means you are operating, it doesn't have to be relative. It could be skeptical, it could be narcissistic, it could be individualistic, it could be all these things that are not inside the boundaries of reality. We have all this talk about being outside of the box. We really need to get back into the box of reality, which would be outside the box for modern society. It's a really complicated thing, but I think it's more appropriate to refer to someone like Lizzie as a moral idiot, because they're not in the name-calling sense. I know that sounds terrible, but truly somebody outside the boundaries of the natural law. It's Frankensteinian. You make your own law. You make your own life. Bacon said, conquer nature by applied technology. That was given out in a very faithful age in a real sense compared to ours. And it didn't dramatically affect them like it does to us today. We literally use technique and technology to create our own realities. That's why you see all the different genders. It's just not possible, but we believe it is because we're moral idiots today. We're outside the bounds of reality.
Yeah,
I know that sounded bad.
No, it doesn't sound bad.
But,
well, again, it's like, let's not misuse language.
Let's not
and
abuse
let's say what we
speech.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was an episode that would get us banned from YouTube, I mean, this is it.
Is this going to be it?
Well, yeah, I think it is. We've kicked like 5 hornets' nests.
Yeah.
Abortion, the insanity of transgenderism,
Right.
sodomy's a sin,
Public education
public education
is
is
immoral and
death
intellectually
camps for
bankrupt.
souls.
Soul death camps.
Let's see how long we've got. Yeah.
Yeah, there's more to talk about, so don't go away yet.
I don't know how this show has flown under the radar for
I
so
know,
long.
you've been great. But because you have honesty and humility
I don't
and
think
charity.
that's why YouTube cares. I don't think
They don't
it's-
care about honesty, but I think you've been charitable. You're not vitriolic. You
I hope
don't
not.
you don't promote your guests being over the top or hyperbolic.
But see, over the top is such a relative term.
Right,
You know,
right.
like,
But you still don't promote that in the true sense of the word.
yeah.
Extremism, for example. We would be labeled extremists by the liberal woke left, but I don't think that's true. And I don't think you abide in that. I think you search for the golden mean between the two extremes.
I
Is
hope
it
so.
true? Yeah.
How many people do you think are going to be moving, you know, with COVID and with people working from home? I think more and more people are beginning to kind of move to where they want to live.
Yeah,
A lot of people can
Yeah.
just work from wherever.
that's right.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
This sort of demographic
It's
shift.
changing.
Florida, for example, is seeming to become increasingly
Populous.
conservative.
Also, while you're on the topic, just you asked for homeschooling statistics.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
statistics. Let's
I
do
wanted to
it.
know.
So 2016, 2.3 million, 2019, 2.5, 2020, 2.65, 2021, 3.7 million.
Whoa!
to-
My people are coming home.
Literally coming home.
Coming home.
And being
The
schooled.
National Home Education Research Institute.
Homeschooling. Oh, I love that.
Take that, big government.
I love that.
But how many people will be moving?
Yeah, now we're talking about moving states too, because work has become remote.
Yeah, it has.
I live in California and I'm moving in
Sorry.
June.
Oh, I'm happy.
I'm moving to Texas.
How bad is California? Is it as bad as people say
It's,
right now, or is it?
It's a lot worse and not as bad as
Are you
people say.
what are you laughing?
Well, I just moved from here from California.
You just moved here from
When
California.
people move to Steubenville, Ohio, from California by their own volition,
Yeah.
you know that things are.
You would be surprised by how many good souls there are in California. You'd be surprised.
I know for sure there are. I used to live in San Diego.
Yeah.
Good people.
There are a lot of good people. You find the coastlines and the indoctrination camps do a good job of really corralling the sheep. But I got to tell you, I know so many good folks. I live in Roseville, California right now, and it's shockingly sane compared. I used to work in a school, John Adams Academy, that's shockingly sane. They're trying to recover an authentic education. They use classical sources. They're very respectful of the truth. It's an amazing organization. And there are more and more things like that popping up. But it's still difficult because you have the governor who is enacting these insane laws with the homeless, with education, with COVID, with all these other things. So it's pretty bad. And I love California. We're happy to be moving to Texas because we're doing work in education.
Nice.
And in fact, I would like to share one of the visions that the group I'm working with has. We have this, we want to start a school. We want to start kind of a unique school, but kind of not a unique school. We want to have an authentic, Catholic, classical, liberal arts collegiate university on some land, but we also want to have below that an artisan academy. We want to begin with agriculture. We want to have animal husbandry. And then we want to have woodworking, carpentry certification programs, vocational programs, metalworking, plumbing, electrical, construction, a business program, all grounded in Catholic ethics. And we're trying to put this together to serve good works and to draw people back into community and subsidiarity.
Do you know who Jacob Imam is?
I've heard the name from here, right?
He lives here. I got to get you two together
Please
these
connect
next
me with
couple of days.
Okay. Please
Because
do.
you two are really speaking the same language. He started a workshop here in Steubenville. And I don't know the full story, but he's creating this sort of course where people come in and by the end of the first year, they'll be producing things in order to sell them, in order to
wonderful.
Pay for their education, so they're not going to be going into debt or anything like that.
And this is somewhat of the idea. If you want to read a great essay by C.S. Lewis, has an essay called Good Works. When you know today, I hope, that manufacturing it operates on the model of planned obsolescence, right, as a future business model. And And we believe the opposite. So we return to Aristotelian, the notion of economics. Economics means the law of the household. And if you read Aristotle's economics, it starts with the land. On top of that land is a house. In that house is a man and a woman and their biological children. And all wealth comes from the ground. And it's really true and beautiful and good. And that's what we're going to recover. And I have an advisory board that is out of this world.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you who's on it right now. We're working and
You
we're...
might as well give us a hint.
I'll give you one hint.
Yeah, one hint.
One guy is Matt Fradd. He's on my advisory board.
Another hint.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You knew that you're on my
I don't know
advisory
how
board.
much advising I can
You're
give,
supposed
but
to,
I'm
you're supposed to
part of
contact me every week. You've kind of
Am I
laughed a little
really?
bit. Yeah.
There's no way I'm ever going to do that.
I know.
I'll contact you to speak to you as a friend.
Well, yeah, but it's in the contract, buddy. Read the fine
Is
print.
it?
We can talk
did I
later.
sign it?
You did. You promised.
Damn.
It's right. Well, that's okay. I'm not worried about it. We're still getting going. We got time to make this up, so we're fine.
What about a text?
You can text me. We're
Yeah.
fine. No,
That-
that'll do. In
yeah.
fact, we're close. We're not, every couple of weeks we're touching base,
Yeah.
which is fine. But the souls we have involved in this, including you, are just, I think, the best educational minds in America. Are
Not
working on
me,
this
but
way.
I'm
And,
glad.
well,
You don't want to begin with me.
I'm not going to say anything definitive about
but you
that.
have some other really great people
I have
who actually know what they're talking about.
Unbelievable, great people that know that we're talking. They're actually literate and brilliant. Not. I'm talking about me compared to me.
Did one of their names rhyme with Peter Kraft?
I wish.
Yeah.
They
what
don't.
about Anthony Eslon? Anything,
I
any
wish.
names
I
rhyme with Anthony
I talked to
Eslon?
both of them, but they're very busy. So I wanted Anthony Eslin and Dr. Peter Kraft to work with me.
Yeah.
And I reached out. I reached out for the best.
What did Kraft say? Kraft's very honest.
He was great. He said, you know what? He said he would talk with me and offer me the benefit of his great mind. He said he would do that. But he said, I'm not a joiner. And I think that was just really smart.
I like that.
Someone who would join my club, I would be very
Yeah.
suspect.
We might have Kraft on the show this month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, did you know that? I told you that.
I want to get him on my little new show called Finding the Lost.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to
I'll
happen.
hook you up.
I'm going to try it. Really?
Well, you've been in touch with him, so.
I ask him. Oh, well, listen. He's already been of great help to me
What a
in many
guy.
things. He's such a great teacher. He offers his mind. He'll help you. He's so charitable. I've written essays that he's helped me form ideas for. He's fantastic. And Anthony Eslin as well. Great guys, just fantastic. But I have of other guys I also consider really up there with those guys. So I'll be tight-lipped about that right now because that's
Yeah.
being developed as we speak. I'm working on it every day, and we'll talk more about that later.
It'll probably be in that newsletter, right?
It'll be everything in the newsletters a part of this program.
Wouldn't you say?
That's quite right. No, that's quite right.
Yeah.
We may not have names and dates, but I'm telling you, this is really going to happen. And if anyone's interested in dialoguing about it, I love that. So everyone has my email address and they can reach out.
What is a book you've read recently, or at least dabbled in, that you've
Oh my goodness.
found enjoyable?
Oh my goodness. I'm delving into educational sources right now. So there's Hugh of St. Victor,
Yeah.
and I can't even pronounce the name of the book. Didascalion.
No.
It's his rendition of explaining the liberal arts, and it's just fabulous. But again, I would highly recommend that I learn how to read first and read well to really pull out of this what the medieval conception of the liberal arts, because it's the culmination of the ancient Greeks and Romans as it developed through the Catholic University in the Middle Ages from about 300s on up. Really fantastic. The liberal arts. A recovery of the liberal arts is what we need. So I've been reading books like that. I'm reading a book by Donald Cowan called Unbinding Prometheus. It's a series of his lectures on education. Very interesting. Louise and Donald Cowan were involved in forming the education for University of Dallas, had a lot to do with Thomas More College in New Hampshire, and a lot of things
Great
like
things about both of those
Yeah.
universities, yeah.
that. Really good schools.
What is something you read that's completely unimpressive, but you enjoy it?
I think it's completely impressive, but I've reread The Odyssey several times this year because I'm working with some great kids in Georgia and Mexico. We're working through some great books. Fantastic kids who have reached out and asked me to work with them. And
Well, that's way cooler than what I was going to say. I was really
What were you
hoping
gonna say?
Is it that comic called Asterix? Is that what it's called? Or
Asterix.
what's that? The
Oh.
Gauls and the Romans?
It's like, isn't it like Astrid and something?
Some-
Obelisk and
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
You said the Odyssey.
yeah,
I said this comic that my son reads.
Asterix and Obelix.
Asterix and Obelix. You ever heard of that?
no,
Oh,
never,
it's fun.
never. I'm
I think
into
it was originally in French, but it's just a
Okay.
kid's comic book.
Okay.
I read that the other day.
That's wonderful. Well,
Thanks,
I've read
man.
The Lord of the Rings, fairy tales. I've read The Monk's Tales this year. I've read The Republic 5 times this year. I did a course. I did a lecture on
Wow.
it, a whole hour long. But
Yeah,
it was
but
so
have you
enjoyable.
read? Shut up. Have you read any comic books?
Recently, I would. I'm not above it. I'm not saying that. I just had a lot of work to do.
Man, that's
for my job.
impressive. 5 times you've read.
Had to. Yeah, I get so hung up on books 5, 6, and 7. The core of it. The funny thing about The Republic is that smart people say that it's the quintessential book on education. And the first 10 times I read it, I'm like, how is this about education? As a school teacher, I had no idea. But now, after about the 25th time, I finally realize how this is about education. And I'm a slow learner, so those of you who read The Republic the first time and get it.
I think it was in the Republic that Socrates said that education, unlike, say, sports
Yeah.
or athletics or
I know where you're
gymnastics,
going.
yeah,
Yeah.
you shouldn't put too much strain when it comes to education.
Intellectual things.
Yeah, I think he said let it be more like play.
Yeah. Well,
Is
he
that
said you
correct,
could
or-
force people to do athletic things and it's good for them.
Yes.
You can't force people to do intellectual things.
Yeah.
That's counterproductive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a wonderful book by Joseph Pieper called Leisure
Yeah.
is the Basis of Culture. And leisure in the Greek means school, schola in Latin. But the school itself is supposed to be a leisure place. Now think about it. The public schools are all about activity. Do, get it done, all this intensive materialistic work rather than the leisure time to do the highest thing man can do, which is contemplate truth. That has to be an essential element of an authentic education. Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why
Yeah.
I'm so pumped about my son going to St. Gregory the Great Academy.
Oh my goodness.
Raising their own animals, slaughtering
Yes.
their own animals,
Yes.
eating their own animals,
So good.
reading poetry,
Yeah.
hanging out.
By the way, I reached
playing
out to
soccer, rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, St. Greg's is fabulous.
It
It's
is.
one of the finest schools in America. And I reached out to Sean Fitzpatrick. I asked him to be on my show. He said yes.
What a guy.
I'm
He's
reaching out to guys
terrific.
like that. He's fantastic. Good souls.
Yeah. Now, I think they take a lot of their sort of philosophy from John Senior.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was John Senior, maybe it was, but I think the basic idea is that the good books have to be an introduction to the great books.
Quite true.
So before you can read, kind of like what you said about mythology,
Yeah.
you want to know how to read a myth before you do it because of how you've been conditioned, perhaps.
Right.
Don't just jump into the great books necessarily, but begin
Yeah.
with the good books. Why is that the case?
Well, I didn't even get to say, but what I was getting to one of the things people always ask is, can I have a list of good books? And I don't like to do that, but there is a book I highly recommend. Michael O'Brien wrote a book called The Landscape with Dragons, and it's a commentary on modern literature. And in the back of that, he has hundreds of books that are good, that are worth reading.
Landscape.
A Landscape with Dragons, Michael O'Brien. That's the shortcut and the better answer than I have, because I would have to get to know somebody, see how they read, talk to them, and then make specific recommendations. If I got to really know you, I could recommend 5 books. Michael O'Brien has vetted all these books, and he's excluded books that are grounded in false principles. And he's included books that are good. So I would highly recommend that. And he's more open than I am, but you might find him very narrow and closed. People criticize him. But Michael O'Brien is a fabulous soul, and he's very discerning. So definitely get your hands on A Landscape with Dragons. Go to the back. For every age, he has a list of, I think, hundreds of books, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a better place than asking me, what do you read?
Well, here's a question for you. If you had the luxury of taking an entire month off from all your responsibilities and you could read a book, maybe a book you've been hoping to read for a while, or maybe a book you'd like to read again, what would it be? Suppose next month, you could take next month off.
Yeah, I hate the cliche of this, but it would have to be the Bible. If not, it would have to be something from Aquinas or Augustine. These teachers, they have so much to tell you. I mean, the Bible's another book that we ought to learn how to read before we read it. Right? You know, the Bible has been used to justify everything known to man, but it is the revealed Word of God. It's the Scriptures.
Good answer.
There's no more important book. But I've found great solace and help from Augustine and Aquinas and the other church doctors. There's a hierarchy. So that highest thing is the revealed Word of God. That's the highest. Then you have the church doctors and the saints and the great
fathers,
popes. Yeah. Then you have your local priests, and then you have your parents. Then you have children, and then you have the public schools down there, which you should absolutely ignore when it comes to reading lists.
So when it comes to the Bible, what do you think often prevents people from beginning to even attempt to read it?
At the moment, it's the utter lack of literacy. There's not just biblical literacy. You know, in the Catechism it says, "Who's the interpreter of the Scriptures?" You know, and modern Protestantism says you are, right? The Catechism says the Holy Spirit is the interpreter of Scripture. That's a profound truth. If you get in touch with that, you should ask, well, wait, what do you mean when you say that the Holy Spirit is the interpreter of Scripture?
Yeah.
And if you could figure that out, and then you read the Bible by the light of truth, interpreted by the Holy Spirit, and maybe aided a little bit by church doctors, you're going to have a wonderful experience.
In my experience, I think the biggest obstacle to me for really diving into the scriptures is probably that I have an unrealistic expectation of how I should feel when I read them. You know. So one thing I've done over the last few weeks is I've got 2 ribbons in my Bible. So I began at Psalm 1,
Right.
and then I began at John 1 from the Gospel. And so my daily reading is to read at least a psalm, sometimes multiple, and then to at least read one chapter. The Bible is like Mount Everest. Like, how do you come at it? Just one step at a time. You can't just bring the whole thing in at once. I know
One word.
Yeah, my wife has really enjoyed listening to Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year
Yes.
podcast. She's
Yeah.
definitely an auditory
Yeah.
sort of. I get distracted too easily if I listen to somebody read something to me.
Sure. Father Mike doesn't just read it. He gives a little interpretation afterwards, which is
God
really
bless
wonderful.
him. He's done such a really great.
It's the #1 podcast in the universe right now.
Yeah, maybe
Right?
it was at some point for a long time. Maybe
Yeah.
it still is.
I think it even is
Is it?
more. Is it? Check it out.
Is it, Neil?
I believe it is. And it's really exciting. And it's,
bless
it's
that
funny.
man.
You talk about reading, distraction, hearing. We have a very serious question in education about what's primary. Letters of the mind. What's primary? Reading something or hearing something? What's more profound? Which is secondary?
I would just say hearing.
Hearing is primary.
Is it? Why?
Yeah. Well,
That's what I would-
Well, because if you read something, that's okay. So the written word does violence to the spoken word. How? It reduces it. When it's written, it has to be restored to its spoken form.
I love my favorite translation, unapologetically, is the King James Version.
It's because it's beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
because it's beautiful.
Yeah. It is beautiful.
That's not the only reason, but aesthetically, that's why I love it. I like
Yeah.
it far more than the Douay Rheims, which I find awkward and clunky.
kind of difficult. Yeah.
I'm not disparaging it. It's
Sure,
a beautiful translation. It's very esteemed in
Yeah.
our tradition, and people should read it.
Yeah.
But I personally, when I read just leisurely, I like to read the King James, and I read it out loud.
That's enjoyable.
To myself. It's very
Very
enjoyable.
And there's something about reading it out loud that allows you to hear it
Yeah.
more than you would hear it if you just read it silently. And reading's wonderful, but it's a technology. And technology is dangerous. Technology always holds out the promise that you will be like God. And it's dangerous. People don't realize how dangerous the written word can be. And this is one of the problems with literacies. We are of the mindset, inverted order again, that literacy will set you free, that reading will set you free. That's not the case. Hearing, that has the potential to set you free, but it's not just hearing. It's hearing and understanding and knowing the source, knowing where the thing comes from, and allowing it to penetrate your soul such that it has the capacity to form you or conform you to the truth. That's the idea. Reading rarely has that effect. But to the one who understands the technology, reading can be very, very fruitful. But it's also very dangerous. It's more dangerous than fruitful in this age.
Yeah. I really want to read a fairy tale with you.
Let's read a fairy tale.
Yeah.
The Father Mike podcast is the #1 in the religion category.
Oh, the
But
religion
it was the #1 in all categories
was it?
at some
I remember
point.
And now it's only, okay.
Yeah, it
Okay.
goes up and down.
I was way too
especially around the
excited
start of the year. It
Okay.
definitely did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right when it starts.
Before we read this fairy tale, I want to invite people to please subscribe and click that bell so you don't miss any of this great content that we're putting out. Most of our viewers aren't subscribers, so it would be sweet if you would help us out by clicking that subscribe button and that bell button, because then YouTube literally is forced to let you know whenever we put out more Christian propaganda. All right, what is your favorite fairy tale? Let's do it.
Oh, my favorite fairy tale is a little too long, probably.
Okay.
Did you have a Russian fairy
Oh
tale
my
that you love? Let's
gosh.
do the Russian one you love, because I love the fairy tale, The Three Golden Hairs of the Devil. And one of the reasons I just love it is because as I retell it to children, it just brings them to life. They're just captivated if you can tell it in the right spirit. Absolutely. What's your favorite Russian fairy tale?
Well, honestly, I forget the name of them. I have a collection. I don't think it's here. I was reading them to the kids. Fire. This is really good. The Firebird, the Horse of Power, and the Princess. I don't know if that's. Let's see how long this thing is. Oh, dude, it's too long.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But your favorite?
No, I forget the title of these different ones because it's been a while since I've read them to the kids.
There's so many good ones.
Let's ask people watching, what's your favorite fairy tale?
Yeah, what's your favorite fairy tale? And listen, Italo Calvino has compiled the Italian folk tales. That's a wonderful book of very short stories. They're pithy, they're folky, they're just great.
All right, here's a fairy tale which I haven't read before. It's called Spring in the Forest. It's a beautiful name.
Yes.
And I chose it because it's relatively short. Haven't read it before. So let's see what we think.
Okay.
Warmer the sun shone, and warmer yet. The pines were green now. All the snow had melted off them. Drip, drip, the falling drops of water, making tiny wells in the snow under the trees. And the snow under the trees was melting too. Much had gone, and now there were only patches of snow in the forest, like scraps of a big white blanket shrinking every day. Isn't it lucky our blankets don't shrink like that? Said Marussia. Old Peter laughed. What do you do when the warm weather comes? He asked. Do you still wear sheepskin coats? Do you still roll up at night under the rugs? No, said Marussia. I throw the rugs off and put my fluffy coat away till next winter. Well, said old Peter, and God, the Father of us all, he does for the earth just what you do for yourself, but he does it better. For the blankets he gives the earth in winter get smaller and smaller as the warm weather comes, little by little, day by day. And then a hard frost comes, grandfather, said Ivan. God knows all about that, little one, said old Peter, and it's for the best. It's good to have a nip or two in the spring to make you feel alive. Perhaps it's his way of telling the earth to wake up, for the whole earth is only his little one after all. That night, when it was story time, Ivan and Marussia consulted together, and when old Peter asked what the story was to be, they were ready with an answer. The snow is all melting away, said Ivan. The summer is coming, said Marussia. We'd like the tale of the little snow girl, said Ivan. The little daughter of the snow, said Marussia. Old Peter shook out his pipe and closed his eyes under his bushy eyebrows, thinking for a minute. Then he began. That is beautiful. Isn't that remarkable?
That is beautiful. If you can enter that story, yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, that was a gamble. I didn't know what we were going to read, but that is just poetry.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And what can that do to the imagination and soul of a child? If read with the right spirit, right?
Now, my favorite Brother Grimm's, just because it's the most gruesome, is what is it? Beggars, the Bride, or the
Which one is it?
I don't know.
How's it go?
You tell us so I don't bore people about your favorite fairy tale while I look this one up. Okay.
Well, my favorite one that I mentioned that I love telling is the 3 Golden Hairs of the Devil, about this little boy. There's a huge kingdom, and in the center of the kingdom is this castle with an evil king and a lovely wife. And the king and the wife are pregnant. And in a remote village far away, a very poor village, there's a poor tenant farmer couple who was also pregnant. And there was a prophecy that the little boy born to the poor peasant farmers was going to marry the king's daughter. And the king heard the rumor and just wouldn't have it.
Okay.
He was absolutely infuriated. So the children were born, and the king travels to the land of the poor people and disguised as a merchant, buys the little child for 2 bags of gold. Right? He takes the child, they acquiesce, he puts the child in a box and chucks it over the bridge into the river. But the box doesn't sink. It floats down the river. And the miller and his wife, cleaning the laundry the next day, find the child, bring him in and raise him. It's a beautiful, and they raise him to be a virtuous, good young man.
I have to read that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Beautiful. So,
do y'all have a favorite fairy tale?
Yeah.
Or is this like me asking him continually what poems he knows?
No,
It's just not going to happen.
I had a teacher at John Paul Catholic who had a course which it wasn't like supposed to be on fairy tales, but she really liked fairy tales, so we read a lot of them. And I just remember reading a lot of versions of Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
It was really, really interesting just to hear all the different versions of that, like the subtext that are just completely lost in like modern tellings and things. So I really like that one.
Right.
So, I mean, let's see if I can find it. Robber's Bridegroom. You know what that one
That's
is?
your favorite? No.
No, it's not my favorite, but it's the most gruesome, which is why I like it.
Is it short?
This is the one where I was reading it and my wife was giving me the eye like, you should stop this. This is really bad. But I just pressed on like a champ.
How bad is it? Let's hear it.
Well, am I boring?
Yeah. Are you guys bored? I'm not. I
Chat,
love
are
it.
you guys bored?
Yeah, they might be bored. But at this point, I mean, does it matter? This
think
is
you
not
should-
about them.
I
not
think we
about-
should just do a retelling of it. I think we
Yeah,
should
what-
find some
what's-
kind of
yeah, what's the
outline and tell
gruesome
yourself
part?
the
What's the
Matt
gruesome
version.
All right. So just so people know, my sister and I write little horror stories.
right.
It's called Sibling Horror. They can check out the podcast. It's also on YouTube if they type in Sibling Horror. Because I actually wrote a modern version of this and then paid this lovely lady to read it from a first-person
I have
perspective.
not heard this yet. I've got to hear it.
But yeah, people should check this out. This is terrifying. Like, this is absolutely awful. So let me kind of give you a retelling of it, right? So there's this girl, and her father can no longer afford to keep her. And so he says, the next suitable man who comes looking for my daughter's hand, I will just give her to him. Yeah. So this fella shows up, and the father agrees. And the girl doesn't like him, and she doesn't know why she doesn't like him, but he just gives her a weird feeling. And so she avoids him whenever she can. And one day she's at the market, and she bumps into him, and he says, my love, we're about to be wedded, but you've never come to see me. And she tries to get out of it. She says, well, I don't know where you live. And he tells her it's in the middle of the forest. And that he will strew ashes on Sunday towards his house so that she can find him. So she wakes up Sunday morning and she follows the ashes to his house. She walks into this house and it's very decrepit and broken down, and no one can be heard. There's no one around. She just walks into this kitchen with all these very large knives. Am I boring you yet?
No.
And so she opens this door and it's a staircase down to the cellar. She walks down, she hears something bubbling and she knows there's someone in there, and she calls out. No one answers. She walks down and she sees this old woman stirring something in a cauldron. And this woman's eyes are funny. They've been sewn shut. And we find out that they've been sewn shut so that she can never escape. And while she's standing there and telling this old woman while she's there, the old woman says, oh, my darling, they will eat you. They are the eaters of man flesh. Now's a really good time to stop this video if you have kids watching, because it's only going to get worse. And so all of a sudden she hears this commotion above her on the main floor, these heavy boots and the screams of this young girl. And these 3 or 4 people drag this girl down, lay her on a table, force feed her wine and oil, and then butcher her. So cutting her body up, and she's hiding behind a barrel. You good? We good? We can still go, right?
Still good.
All right. I mean, Elizabeth Warren's allowed to be on YouTube
Yeah.
talking about butchering people for real, so
This
I
is
figured
writ
this
large.
is okay,
Yeah,
right?
fine.
And so she's behind this barrel, and while they're butchering this poor girl, one of the fingers flies off and lands right by the girl, and she holds onto it. And then they realize, the reason they cut off the finger is they wanted the gold ring on it. So when the finger comes off, she holds onto it, and then they're about to search for it. But the old lady says, oh, don't do that now. Just eat, because she's trying to protect the young girl. So they all eat the girl, and they fall asleep. And then the young heroine helps the old woman out, because all the ashes have gone. I forget. And she leads the old woman back to the house, right? Well, the father's so pleased to see her, and he hugs her, and she tells him what she saw. And he says, well, let's not do anything drastic. Let's wait till the wedding day. What do you mean? You don't want me to call it off? No, I have a plan. So she knows he has a plan. So after the wedding, this man stands up and he gives a toast. And after the toast, he turns to his new bride and says, don't you want to say something? And so she gets up and she says, yes, I'd like to recount a dream I had. I was walking through the forest. I found a house. I walked in. And then the man starts to sweat a little. And she's like, oh, honey, sit down. It was only a dream. There were these men, and they came in, and they dragged this poor woman down. She explains everything that happened, right? Yeah. And he keeps getting really nervous. Well, it's just a dream. They cut off the finger of this young girl, and she holds it up, and here it is. Now, either in my version or the Grimm's version, I'm getting confused, but they hold him down and drive a stake through his face.
Wow.
And that's how the story ends. That's what we're talking about.
That's a good fairy tale.
Tales.
That's what we're talking about.
What is the reaction from the live stream? I mean, how many
We have a few good ones from people who've just tuned into the show.
Wow.
Picked a horrific time to join the live stream. The eyes emoji.
That's hilarious. Have you heard something more graphic and vicious than that? Like what I'm saying, it's worse in the Brother Grimm.
Yeah.
It
is. It's graphic, and there's a huge movement to discredit the fairy tales, to say that these things, they hurt children, they horrify them. But the reality is what they do is they help a child compartmentalize these horrific things that happen in the real world in the safety of their own homes from a distance, and cultivate the virtue to handle them later.
Yeah.
This is the real potential of that kind of story.
Yeah.
It's not like watching the news where these real things happen. That's actually...
It's not like watching Elizabeth Warren try to justify the slaughter of the unborn.
Watching Elizabeth Warren justify that is detrimental to a human soul. The Grimm's fairy tales prepare a human soul to encounter the truth.
To encounter real witches.
Real witches, real
like
demons, real
Elizabeth
reality.
Warren.
Unlike, Elizabeth Warren would... Well, there's just such a difference between the reality of the fairy tales Elizabeth Warren is telling...
But
and this.
Yeah, but see, I agree with what you're saying. My point is, though, and you agree, I'm sure, you learn about witches who want to literally eat children, and then you understand people like Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. Yeah, or at least
who doesn't want to actually eat children, I presume, but wants to kill them.
It's
wants
much
people
worse.
To be able
Eating
to,
them would be better than encouraging a generation of people to murder their own children in the womb.
You got to, why? I don't know if that was just a hyperbolic
just
statement.
Eat a couple kids. I mean, it's a thing.
Better than millions.
Well, yeah. Okay, it was hyperbolic. It was hyperbolic.
Yeah,
it was a terrible thing to say. But when you hold that ideology of murdering of innocents, it's one of the four sins that cries out to heaven for vengeance. Cannibalism isn't on that list, but that's probably is on that list.
Probably close.
It is. No, it's on the list. Okay, I shouldn't have said it, but it's just so horrific. The fairy tales are a counterexample of Elizabeth Warren, and would encounter a child well-formed to understand what's wrong with Elizabeth Warren. That would be a great benefit of saying, wow, there really are people in the world that
who
would do horrific things,
children.
who would do terrible things, right? The consumption of children.
Dragons exist.
Yeah, it's an irony that you might have the Elizabeth Warren educated people believe that the Aztec sacrifice of children is horrible. They might look down on the Aztecs for that child sacrifice, missing
the fact that they're promoting the same thing.
Times worse sacrifices that we're making of children.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I've tried to get at by that hyperbolic statement.
Let's take a few questions from our patrons and local supporters. Gustavo, great name.
What's
his
last
last name? Ferreria?
I know Gustavo, and I love him.
How do you say his last name?
Ferreira.
That's beautiful. Gustavo Ferreira.
Ferraro. Is it Ferraro? Yeah, I love Gustavo.
Ferreira.
He lives in Canada.
He says,
he's a dear soul.
What is the right epistemology? I see some values in, I do not know this person, V.Y. Gotsky.
Vygotsky,
Who's that?
He's a modern educational psychologist. Vygotsky.
I see some values in Vygotsky and other constructivists, but I believe they are wrong because we must conform to reality and not construct one out of our minds. Also, what is the concept of inverted classroom and why is it bad?
Okay.
I wonder if he's joining late because we did get into this earlier.
Well, Gustavo and I know each other. He's one of these great souls who's reached out to say, hey, me and my wife want to do right by our children. And he asked for a book list, and we've been in dialogue. He's just a good soul. And he's asking the right question. So he's obviously highly educated. So he's asking, what is this inverted classroom? And you might even see it, you'll see it as starkly in Canada as you'll see it here. That modern pedagogy and the constructivists and all these guys, they're just the evolution of John Dewey education. And what would be essentially wrong with them is what would be unseen is these principles we're talking about, the ground floor. So Gustavo's asking a question that would take many months to answer, but he's intuitively right. There's something wrong with the inverted order, and he's onto them. So be suspicious of Vygotsky. And there may be some good in his analyses, but the constructivists in general are just offshoots of this materialism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Hartman, not Elizabeth Warren, Elizabeth Hartman says, for current or future college professors and scholars, how might we better prepare our minds and hearts to do what we can to give a life-giving education to our students and encourage them to seek these more profound and beautiful things in an authentic education? What are some things we should integrate into our pedagogy to encourage our students to more toward the transcendent reality? Also, what can we do when we run into tension or persecution from administration?
My goodness, what a great question. This is the thing to ask. If you're a school teacher, that doesn't mean de facto you're doing something wrong. But if you commit to the theory and practice of the modern school, then you're probably causing damage to your kids. But when your door closes, you can do the right thing with your scholars. You can do that. So bring in principles of truth. What I did for the last 20 years is we would have our fairy tale book and we'd put our school-approved textbook underneath. We'd be reading our fairy tales. If that door opened,
oh, that's fabulous.
We would just switch and I'd have some ridiculous question that we'd all have a canned answer to. And it would always look great. And you're going to encounter persecution from your administration. One of the last things I heard is my administrator said, why are you reading the Odyssey with your kids? That's abusive. And I'd say, well, there's no answer. Yeah, I would just avoid them. If you do the right thing, you're going to be persecuted.
Yeah.
That's just going to be the
Should people
fact.
even bother should people even bother trying to teach at public schools at this point?
I don't know. It's the enterprise is evil. There's so many good souls in the schools. Every teacher I've ever met goes into it because they love people and they want to help. The best thing I can say is, I think there's value to going to a school like what's her name? I forgot her name.
Oh, I moved on from the page. Sorry.
No, I think there's value in saying I'm going to be a beacon of light in this very difficult situation. But on the other hand, I think we should maybe leave the public schools and organize our own schools that are authentic and good. And you can't really do that when you go into the Catholic schools because unfortunately many of the Catholic schools have followed suit with the public schools and do the same exact thing.
That was supporter Elizabeth Hartman.
Oh. Elizabeth Hartman, great question.
How did you do that? That was very impressive. He's very good.
Elizabeth, reach out and email me, please, and we should have a conversation because
do you want to do it?
Love to.
Do you want to give your email out?
Yeah. Do I ever not? I always.
We have the email
Hey, listen.
looking for teachers.
Yeah, not that many people care about education, so I don't get that inundated. A couple hundred people email me, and it's great.
What's your email?
It's Stephen Jonathan RC at yahoo.com. But if you go to my email, if you go to that, click on that link that
That's
Neil
what you
put
want
up,
to do. Click that
that'll
link,
go to my
baby.
email too. So
And you reply to everybody?
yeah, oh yeah.
You are amazing.
I reply to everybody because they're all good people like Elizabeth. They ask good questions. They're sincere, they're honest, and it's joyful that I get more letters because honestly, education is not sexy. Let's be honest. It's probably the last thing people care about, but it's really important to cultivate.
Jacob Tycoli says, please ask him if his university will accept the GI Bill. What's the GI Bill?
You are welcome at our university. If this kind of thing appeals to you, the GI Bill is the when you join the armed services and you complete it, they fund part of your education. And listen, don't worry about that. We're going to find a way to make things work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, what is his opinion of Hillsdale College?
Hillsdale is a fine university. There's a handful of schools that I would even be okay with people that I love going to, and they're in tiers. Tier 1, 2, 3, 4. I do like Hillsdale. There's really a lot of wonderful professors there, and they want to ground their program in truth. They're some of the good guys. Hillsdale is awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about one thing with schools.
Let's do it.
That we didn't bring up. This is one of the most important pitches I could ever make in my life.
Oh, gosh.
This is so important.
Can you put dramatic music behind
Can you
what he's
add
about
something?
to say?
I should have said this first because there's something really exciting going on at the Archdiocese of Boston.
Really?
Yes, there's a superintendent named Mr. Thomas Carroll, who is a wonderful man, and there's an assistant superintendent named Colleen Donahue, who's the director of Catholic Identity, and these two good souls have conceived a way to edify the wonderful Catholic schools in Boston. And they've organized this small group of a cohort called the St. Thomas More Fellowship. And the St. Thomas More Fellowship is an organization where we are going around to colleges like University of Dallas, Thomas Aquinas College, Steubenville, Wyoming Catholic, and Thomas More and Ave Maria. And we're looking for well-formed souls that love Christ, that want to lead children to God, and we're asking them to come participate as a St. Thomas More Fellow to become a teacher in the Boston schools of Catholic Boston schools. Wow. And I've been hired as the executive director of the St. Thomas More Fellowship.
Nice.
And my wife Faith and I were working on developing a 6-week boot camp to help form these teachers in the authentic arts of teaching.
Oh, I'm so glad you're doing that.
And we're inviting any young soul called to teaching that would like to be an authentic, faithful Catholic teacher to come join us, a new army of souls to reinvigorate the Catholic schools and reform them to the image that God intends them to be. It's a beautiful idea. And this is our first year. We're just getting started. So if anyone out there, young souls called to teach, please reach out. Contact me and let's talk about becoming a St. Thomas More Fellow.
And again, they would contact you by clicking that link.
Yeah, you can click that link, or Neil has another link that has a brochure that explains the program. And you can click on that and go directly to the Archdiocese of Boston. And I would love to talk to you too, if anyone's interested. Any young teacher that's called to the authentic Catholic faith. And in this formation program, we're going to recover the authentic Catholic anthropology. We're going to do the authentic liberal arts. We're going to have practical things like classroom leadership, lesson planning, practicum. We're going to do it all in 6 weeks and prepare you to be successful in the classroom.
Wow. Can I come?
Please, come join us.
I just want to come learn.
Come join us. Yeah, it should be really, really wonderful.
You said your daughter's at Wyoming Catholic.
Yes.
What's your opinion of Wyoming Catholic?
Wyoming Catholic is at the very top of my list of favorite schools of all time.
Why?
I have 1,000 reasons, but one thing that's remarkable, they have this outdoors program.
Okay.
And they take all their students, and the beginning of the year, they take them on a 3-week camping trip. The freshmen. But every year, each class goes on 1 or 2 outdoors trips, and they become well trained in first aid and survival, and they do these amazing things. So my daughter went on this 3-week-long trip. It was harrowing.
I want to go.
It was incredible.
What if, would they let you and me go?
I wish. Yeah, we should go on. We should do it. We'll ask them. Matt Fradd show.
We will asking, promote can we go? You if you let me and
I'm promoting
Steve.
Wyoming Catholic. Please take us on one of these peak experiences.
We'll just follow in the back. We won't chat with anybody.
Yeah. We'll do our thing. We just got to go on this hike. There's no communications. There's no roads. Out in the wilderness, the Wind River Mountains. It's amazing. My Tommy, she got home. She was, I saw a picture, I didn't even recognize her. She was absolutely weathered, windstorm. She said, Dad, this was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And I'd do it again next week. I'd go today. I'd do it again. It just transformed her. That winter, they went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They snowshoed out, made igloos, and stayed out in the wild for 2 nights. In igloos.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Cool. And then the next year they went down the Green River in Utah.
And Wyoming.
Kayaking.
I've never been to Wyoming. It sounds like a cool place.
It is beautiful. Go to Lander, Wyoming. Check out Wyoming
Costner.
Yeah, just north of there, Yellowstone.
I'm thinking of Yellowstone. Is that where it is in Wyoming?
Yeah, close. Well, Yellowstone's in Montana, I think. The show, I'm not even sure where it's filmed. But But the Wyoming Lander, where it is, it's right by the Wind River Mountains, just south of Jackson Hole in Yellowstone Park. It's remarkable. But okay, so that's beautiful. I love that. But the real meat and potatoes, you have Dr. Glenn Arbery and his wife, Dr. Virginia, the president, and Dr. Virginia teaches rhetoric and all these other classes. They have these wonderful teachers who teach the authentic, faithful, liberal arts. They do philosophy, theology, church doctors, literature. It's a liberal arts degree. And if you go on this campus and you meet these kids, then enough will be said. Meet them. They're beautiful. I've met so many good souls there.
There is so many signs of hope.
Yeah,
there really are.
Right. That's true.
There really is.
That's true. There's so many signs of hope. And these good kids at these good schools with good adults who understand the thing we're trying to form for our Catholic schools.
It's almost like it's like when you show, if somebody had grown up with counterfeit money their entire life, poorly made counterfeit money, and then they experience the real thing, you can then tell the difference. And it's like when these people who are raised in perhaps broken homes or broken towns or whatever experience the real thing, and they taste and see the goodness of truth.
That's right.
You
it can
just want
transform
more
a
of it.
soul. There's an interesting quote my wife read to me today, and I can't remember, but it's so important right now, is that something about a deformed soul, when they're encountered with the truth, it's very off-putting. I think it was Aquinas that said something like this. But I remember thinking when my daughter Tommy applied to this school and they sent communication out, it was so honest about the program was that most people conditioned in the modern school would be revolted by it.
Yeah.
And then you go there and you see it is just as advertised. It's not the spa house of ill-reputed experience you get at most colleges. It's the opposite. And for me, that's what makes it so beautiful. But the kids love it too. Once they accustom themselves to that inverted order, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are very few schools like that. You know, I count Thomas Aquinas College among them.
Yeah.
When I went to UD, the spirit on UD is actually really beautiful.
I've heard great things
We went to
about
Steubenville
UD.
today.
What was your experience of Franciscan?
Well, I've only been there today with you, and then I went with you a few months back. So I haven't been there very much, but I loved, we went to that outdoor mass, and obviously you got great kids, and I met and talked to a couple kids, and it was joyful. Joyful. Nothing like a modern public secular university, right? Where an old man goes on campus and you're very suspicious or very whatever. You know, the kids today came up to us, talked to us, reached out.
Yeah.
Very communicable, very intelligent, articulate.
I love Father Dave. He's at the helm of Franciscan, and I got a great deal of respect for him. You know, we had Jordan Peterson here recently.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I went and watched him give a lecture.
Fantastic.
But Father Dave got up. Well, first of all, here's a funny story about Father Dave and Jordan Peterson. They were walking to this chapel. Did you ever go to that? I don't know how they pronounce
With
it.
you?
Port. There's a port. We call it the Port. It's a replica of the church that St. Francis rebuilt in Assisi. I think it was Assisi.
That's not the one we went to. Okay.
No, we didn't go. It's beautiful, actually.
Okay.
This one. It's usually has perpetual adoration.
Okay, we'll go there.
So Father Dave is walking Jordan Peterson to this chapel, and he says we have perpetual adoration here. And what do we mean by that? Well, Catholics believe that, you know, the Eucharist is not just a symbol. And Jordan Peterson stopped him and said, well, what's wrong with a symbol? And like, I don't know, maybe I would have got a little tongue-tied, but Father Dave said, well, maybe nothing, but I think it's a better thing that we could have a symbol of Jordan Peterson here today.
Or we could have
you. And he went, fair point. I was like, that's really
Excellent.
good. Go.
Excellent.
But I tell you, Father Dave did such a good job because Jordan Peterson gave a lecture and then there was a little interview back and forth. And I have never been so proud. He was a priest in the best possible sense. He didn't try to match him in his psychology jargon.
Right.
He didn't shrink from him like, here's the famous guy.
Right.
He didn't interrupt him. He was very patient as Jordan Peterson gave long, good answers.
Right.
And he also proclaimed Jesus Christ to Jordan Peterson, but not in an annoying, like, what are you doing? This is very kind of offensive kind of way. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Offensive's the wrong way, but like, wrong word maybe, but like, it's kind of inappropriate to just like start like calling him to repentance in front of people. He didn't do that. But he was a priest. And it was beautiful.
Wonderful.
And then after he had finished, Father Dave invited us all just kind of extend our hand and offer a prayer. And we had this glorious choir that was singing like it was polyphony, and we prayed over Jordan Peterson. It was beautiful.
That is beautiful.
So I love Franciscan. I mean,
I do
they
too.
have like 3 masses a day, and they're always packed with kids.
Oh,
and
so good. Yeah, today was packed outside. There were tons of kids out there.
And then you've got confessions I think it's Tuesday and Thursday night, and good luck. I mean, it's packed.
Is it packed? Good.
I bring my kids there, and we get to line up for an hour just to kind of get
wonderful.
there, and just to have my kids exposed to these to be these young beautiful people who love Christ. It's really great. That wasn't meant to be an ad for Franciscan.
No, I'll make an ad for it. I get to meet Father Dave tomorrow.
Oh, good.
I have an appointment, and it's the end of the year, busy as can be. And the good man, the good priest, took out 10 minutes for me tomorrow, and I just contacted him 2 days ago.
Yeah,
that's how humble he must be.
He loves Jesus Christ.
Obviously.
When you're
so
with him,
that's always a great sign. So I can't wait to meet him tomorrow and get to know a little bit more. When he led mass today, and it was beautiful. I got some background into how they dealt with the whole COVID thing. It was beautiful, just honest and forthcoming. That the spirit, the charism there is really vibrant. Yeah. So that activity day, how many people were out there?
Oh,
thousands.
It was so cool.
What was that? There must
So
have been a
I
couple
guess
thousand
they're
people
about
out
to
there.
do exams.
Yeah.
And so they had a last hurrah. So we celebrated Holy Mass, and they had a ton of inflatables,
Food,
zip lines,
rock
food,
band.
concert.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
It was something
human,
to behold.
just human.
Human, charismatic, holy, faithful, open.
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought there were thousands of people.
There's a lot of signs of hope.
Yeah, there's a lot of signs of hope, and there's.
I find
more
myself
and more
becoming
schools.
accidentally more and more hopeful.
Really?
I'm not intending to. If
Good.
anything, I'm intending to become more and more pessimistic, but I can't help myf.
Well,
I just
clearly
see
you haven't been in
signs
the
of
public
hope
schools.
everywhere.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think you're right. There's such signs of hope. There's the Cardinal Newman Society. They have a list of 15 of these schools. Steubenville's on it, and I think that list could potentially grow. And the list is supposed to be about schools that have a faithful Catholic identity. The more we have of those, the better. So I'm hopeful with you, Matt. I really am.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where are we at time-wise?
Check here.
We're not
just past 3 hours.
We just beat the 3-hour period. It's amazing.
Okay.
All right, so how many more do you want to do?
I want to do 2 more, and that's
All right,
it.
2
I draw
more.
the line
After
at 3
that,
more hours.
5 hours.
In 7 hours, we're done. I'm calling it a day.
And to those who have hung on to the end here, I feel
can't
like
believe it.
we should take a few questions or
Yes,
comments.
anything. I'm ready
in
to
the
wrap it
live
up when you
stream,
are. And
feel free to.
my time with you, Matt, I just feel like I can never get enough of just enjoying your good company. I love the way you draw people in, and you're magnanimous, and I love that about you.
Well, that's nice. It's a real sign of your own virtue that my kids love you. My kids love you. They're like, oh my gosh, Mr. Steve is coming. They're so excited.
I think it's a
and they're
testament to
excited
them.
about you though because of the right things. They said, we sat down and we had like a 3-hour conversation about, like, you take them seriously. It's a beautiful thing when kids feel they're being taken seriously.
Yeah. It's important to take kids seriously. They're humans.
It really is.
Absolutely.
If you could go back and give young Steve Rummelsburg any parenting advice, I don't know your story.
Yeah.
I know your children are older. What would you say? I mean,
I would say when you're 5, would you please convert to the Catholic faith?
When you're
what I'd say.
5?
Yeah, please. Or whatever. I don't care. If you're 0, become a Catholic.
No, I'm talking about you.
Yeah, I would tell myself.
When did you convert to Catholicism?
I was 40.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
You did know that.
I
You
knew
did.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tragic story. It's and a beautiful one. It's a testament to God's grace and forgiveness to take in a sinner.
A little closer.
It's a testament. I mean, it's a miracle. The thing I'm most grateful for in my life is that God called me. And so if I did it again, I'd be a faithful Catholic man from the beginning. And that would be my advice is embrace the truth. Just seek the truth, embrace the truth, and become a good man.
Were you always this optimistic? Is this just your temperament? Because you really strike me as someone who's very...
I was a shockingly unhappy soul till I was 40.
Really?
Miserable, antagonistic.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Did your wife notice a big change?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Was
It's
she
180.
Catholic?
No, we both came into the church. Well, she was a cradle Catholic.
Yeah.
And then she just had yearnings to come back the very time God was calling me to come in. God called me from the beginning. I just said no for about 20 years, maybe 40. But Faith and I came in at the same, we were at the same Mass being confirmed.
Wow.
But she came back to it and I came to it. It was the best thing I ever could have done in my life. And it made me want to become a good husband and a good father.
Really?
And it absolutely radically changed my relationships with my daughter. My oldest was 14 by the time I caught a glimpse what a Catholic man ought to be. She said, Dad, you did a 360. She thought it was such a
Really?
radical change. And she didn't like it because I was a cool rock and roll surfer dad. And then when I was a Catholic dad, now we're best friends, and she's a faithful Catholic, my daughter Kenya, and she's about to have our second granddaughter, and they take little Kailani Grace to Mass every week, and she married a good, faithful Catholic man named Brandon, my favorite son-in-law, my very favorite.
Only?
Yeah, it's my only, but I really love him and his family, Steve and Melissa Sanchez. I just love these guys. So I think the fact that for Kenya, I was a Catholic dad for those years where she found her soulmate, and that the soulmate's good, the family's good, and to me, you can't buy that because the track I'd taken her on was just misery.
It was, you said?
Oh, absolutely. I ruined my children's lives. God helped me redeem that. And so I can say since becoming Catholic, I've increasingly been a better dad and a better husband and a better man. And as bad as I was, I give all the glory to God. And I'm just so grateful to not be on that track I was as a secular humanist.
What's your advice to parents out there who think they've blown it with their kids? Because, I don't mean to read too much into what you've shared, but it sounds like you're saying you made a lot of really, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of bad mistakes maybe.
Yeah.
And then how do you, just as they say, live with that? How do you forgive yourself or how do you seek forgiveness? What advice do you have for parents out there who are just maybe beating themselves up because they've just...
It doesn't do you any good to beat yourself up, but 100% count on God. If you count on yourself to make the changes, just forget it. Forget it.
Have you met you? You're awful.
Do you even know? I'm giving myself advice here, but I would never rely on myself for anything again. It was such a mistake. And it's weird because my first 4 years, I thought I had it all together. And now that I realize I don't have anything together, I have it so much more together than I did, even though I have nothing together. I'll let God keep it together. It's just such a joy to let the truth of God guide my life.
Yeah, so I don't mean to get too personal because I know this is about your family, but I'm trying to think of how to phrase this because I don't want to pry, but suppose a parent raises their children in the wrong way, maybe their children, because of that, you're not solely to blame, but a parent may be somewhat to blame, begins making really bad decisions that you disagree with. You come back into the faith. How do you love your child? And I don't know your children's story, so I'm not projecting here, but how do you love your children in that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I think some parents take the tactic of always bringing up their faults, always talking about how they need to change, and they're not really at peace.
Right.
It's
a huge mistake. It's really interesting. The work that God has done in my life and the life of my children is exponentially more profound than anything I did or didn't do. And this is interesting. I know a lot of really faithful Catholic parents whose kids have chosen many worse things than my kids.
Yeah.
And I've seen this. So it's almost a form of arrogance to think that you're responsible for the choices your kid makes, but you are responsible for the things you choose. So I think I'd really refrain from judging by appearances. And if you have indictments about yourself, make sure they're about your actions, not about theirs. You can't infer from another person's irresponsible or immoral actions that you've done something immoral, even if there is a connection. That's between you and God. But it's really important to say, if I've done something wrong, pray to God to rectify that thing and let God take care of that other person. We live in an age where we think we're morally culpable for the actions of others. We're not. But as parents, we are responsible for forming our kids in truth. And you can only do what you can do. And
it's so good.
Yeah, if you rely on yourself, which I did for many years, it's the biggest mistake. And it leads into all kinds of neuroses and psychological problems.
How do you know that you're either relying on yourself or God? Like, can you feel that, or is it?
If you're miserable, you're relying on yourself.
Oh.
If you're peaceful, even though you've messed everything up, you're relying on God.
Oh, wow.
It's that simple, I think.
That is so profound.
Yeah.
Jacques Philippe, spiritual writer, I've quoted him often. He says, before we're Christian, we often want the wrong things in the wrong way. We become Christians and then we want the right things, but in the wrong way.
Exactly right.
And I think that applies to our parenting very often because we parent our children and we want what's best for them, but we want it in an anxious sort of way.
Yeah.
And I know I keep saying this to forgive me, listeners, if you're getting bored of me saying this, but if I could go back and give young parent Matt Fradd advice, I would say just relax if you can. And I think the way to relax is to come to accept the love of God. Because if I can accept the love of God, then I can accept myself in Him.
Yeah.
And then I won't be so uptight and so frantic.
That's right.
So like today, you and I went to Holy Mass. It was outdoors. And my son Peter, he's not paying attention. He's playing with the grass. He should be. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But I think maybe 15 years ago, I would have been like, kneel down, sit up, listen to what the priest is saying, because I thought that's what it meant.
That's right.
But I think that was more of a reflection of my own self.
That's right.
Hatred might be too strong of a word, but unacceptance or
false notion that you're responsible for the actions of others. So to be a good model there, which you are, is more important than getting Peter to do what looks good.
That's right.
Yeah.
So someone was just in here the other day, I forget the guest, but they said, let the whole, Jose Maria Escriva said something to the effect of, let your family rosary be like a warm fire that the children wish to come near to.
Yeah.
So I think for so long in my family, it was I wanting to get it right, damn it, because that's how I'm acceptable to God.
That's right.
Kneel down and we're going to say, you're not saying the prayer, say the, and I was just, who wants to be with somebody like that? Whereas last night, my wife, she was in Atlanta, and so I'm with the kids, and I said, hey, we're going to pray the rosary. It'd be great if you could stay for at least a decade. If you want to go after that, that's fine. And it was just very casual. Yeah. And I sat down and I prayed. They stayed for the whole thing. Yeah. But and some of them got up, got drinks of water, it's fine.
Sure.
Because you're just creating this, like, dad's praying the rosary.
Yeah.
That's so much more attractive than sit down and bloody pray it.
That's right. That's right. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I've had this, I've known this, the advice I give, and I don't follow it, of course, because we want to control things. But I've done this thing where in the midst of turmoil with my family, I have two choices. I can either try and control it, or I can pray about it and be the great model. And recently, when I've been able to just get out of my own arrogance and pray about things, I am blown away by the work the Holy Spirit does in the lives of our family. So when I have issues, I pray about these things. I just can't believe what's happened lately. Letting up, like you say, instead of, I really, in the beginning, was rigid, reacting to my lack of faith by being or wanting the right things in the wrong way. Man, I did that, and my wife let me know, and I needed help from other people to say, "Hey, ease up, zealot," because it's a really strong temptation in this world where we think we're in charge of things that we're not in charge of.
I've been noticing that in my own kind of body lately. Just I feel that I'm trying to control a situation.
Yeah,
and I've become more cognizant of that.
That's good.
I was having a conversation the other day with a friend who came over. And he was saying something very interesting. And then my wife brought up an anecdote that I've heard 1,000 times because we've been married a while. And I didn't have the time to hear it. I'm like, yeah, can we hear? I was a bit rude. I don't think I was too rude. I don't think anybody noticed. But I was like, oh, hey, what were you? And I kind of quickly, but this desire to control everything. To control how my children behave, to control how the house looks all the time.
Right.
I even noticed it in my posture,
Interesting.
So if I'm in a conversation, I don't like it. Yeah, let's.
Then you veer it off.
Yeah, as opposed to sort of giving myself over, as it were, to this experience.
Yeah. Like
going to Holy Mass today, and it's outside, and I'm kneeling on the wet grass, and I can kind of hear the priest, but he's a bit away, and. Yeah. That's okay. There's something about submitting to the providence of God.
Yes.
But I'm saying these things as if I know them.
Right.
But I'm really asking your advice.
Yeah. It's so easy for guys like us to commit to the era of perfectionism or thinking that it relies on us. That's really the key. Giving up the control and just saying, for us to be that faithful servant of Christ, that's the best we can do. And whatever that means, it begins with submission to the will of God, right? And when you submit to the will of God, then and only then can you act properly. And that's a state of being, not a state of doing. So it's really easy to get distracted by the appearances of things.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what really throws
even
us
the
off.
Appearance of our children.
Yes.
I mean, if you were to look at me as a 15-year-old kid, you'd be like, he's lost.
Yeah.
And I've got so many friends like this. I've got friends on the same street as me who teach at Franciscan who were doing LSD and were Buddhists and, now they're faithful Catholics. Like, you can't really judge what the Lord's doing. You can only be faithful and then repent when you're not and then trust in the Lord.
Yeah.
But, because I think the opposite is true too, where what we want is our children to love what's good, not to act in a way that it makes it seem like they love what is good. Like, You can fake that.
Yeah.
But I don't want my kids to
do.
fake that.
The modern system cultivates that kind of faking of the automatic response to, okay, I'm doing what dad wants me to. I'm doing what teacher wants me to.
Yeah.
This is a really dangerous thing.
But in the prayer life, in faith, we do that. I think we can do that as parents.
Oh, easily. And it's sad because as much as we're saying to give up that control of the environment, there are things that we are called to do as fathers to help lay the groundwork for this kind of growth and formation. So it's really a hard thing to disentangle the things we really ought to do from the things we ought not to do, because they're all intertwined.
And then also to realize that what we ought to do, we're not going to do perfectly.
That's right.
You know,
yeah, and to not hold ourselves to that standard of perfection.
That's what's so difficult, because you hear things like, if you say something like, you know, you're a father, you got a bloody responsibility, and then you just lay on the self-hatred, you start flagellating yourself, because you know that even if you try, it might go south or pear-shaped, and you just screwed it up again. And
That's right.
But not to let the great be the enemy of the good, I suppose.
Oh, it's really tough. Yeah, you know, your responsibility as a dad is great. You know, but ultimately it's submitting to the will of God and doing his will and not your own. And I think that's the hardest thing, because to do his will is at first to not act, but to be, and then to act following submission to his will. And a lot of times I think we want to act before we submit to the will, even if we're pretty sure what the right thing is. And that gets very complicated. It's very difficult. But in the end, the only way I've known I've ever done the right thing is by its fruits. It's the only way I've ever known. And we shouldn't judge by appearances. You know,
you sent me a text yesterday, and it was so beautiful that I want to read it for people. Okay. And I want to read it for a reason, because I think it's so important that we be encouraging to each other and that we be encouraging to our children. I think anyone listening knows what it's like to have somebody nag at them, to criticize them continually. We also know how unhelpful that is, even to bring about the result that the nagger would have us bring about, you know? But I wrote to you because you were coming to to here, and my wife was going to be in Atlanta. Now she gets back tomorrow, and I was saying to you, look, maybe don't have your wife come out, because I don't want her to come out, and Cameron won't be here, and it's a long trip, and I'd hate for her to feel like it's a wasted trip. All right. And then I wrote to you, and I'm like, hey, I really didn't mean I don't want her here. I just mean I don't want her to be bored. You know?
That's right.
And gosh, what did you say? You said, quote, I'm quoting you, I got your message this morning. We took your words in the very spirit you intended them. And your beautiful kids are like you. They project their goodness onto the world with the kind of force that can only flow from innocence and grace. It's the most beautiful thing to say to somebody.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's so lovely.
Well, I meant it. It's true.
But it just got me thinking, because I see the way you interact with my kids while you're here, and it's just like, just to be encouraging. Like, how many, our kids don't have advocates.
Right.
They're people who demand that they submit to their agendas, or they criticize them.
Yeah.
And we obviously don't want to just make our children just sort of, I don't know. We shouldn't be afraid of conflict.
Yeah, or ambassadors of our own parenting, right?
I'm not sure what you mean.
I think we feel like our kids are a reflection of us, and they are in a way. But when we care about that too much, we can try to impose on them things. And I spent enough time with their kids to really understand them. We were in Corpus Christi for a week with them, right? And that's when I got to know them. Yeah. There's no secrets there. They're just good kids.
It's so important that we be encouraging to our kids.
Yeah, I agree. As brothers in friendship. But it's also important that we tell the truth. And what I said there was true. And people don't need to meet your kids twice to realize that. Yeah. It's pretty obvious. Wow.
Are we still recording?
Oh, yeah.
We're still on? Oh, it's not over? Okay.
Any questions or comments? Or
not too much. A lot of strange kind of off-topic stuff. But we have one from Rewire the West.
Hey, oh, yeah. That's Evan. Evan Amato.
So Evan's asking, for both Matt and Steve, what's one book that you're dying to read but haven't gotten to?
My gosh.
I'll tell you a book that I want to say I've read. And this is a line from G.K. Chesterton. He said, the classics are those books that people wish to say that they've read, but which nobody wants to read.
Yes.
He's joking, I think. But I bought War and Peace. And I read the first several chapters and very much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But stopped. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll go back to that. I have this August coming up, and I hope to take the whole month off the internet again.
Oh, yeah, and read.
I'm kind of thinking I want to read The Brothers again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my
I just
goodness.
love The Brothers.
Okay.
Or maybe something else, but I just love Dostoevsky so much.
Yeah.
If people are interested, one thing I often suggest to people if they're intimidated by these great authors is to read some of their short stories, because you feel like you've accomplished something.
Right. Get through it.
And I have never been so moved by a book than Dostoevsky's novella, A Gentle Creature. Have you ever read that?
I haven't read it.
I would strongly recommend people read that book, A Gentle Creature. It broke my heart. It just
awesome. What's
just
a book you haven't read
devastated
that
me.
you want to read?
War and Peace.
Okay, that's the one.
would
You
be
said you read
one.
the first 7 chapters.
Even
Okay.
like sci-fi, I'd like to read Ender's Game. You ever read Ender's Game?
Yes, actually, I listened to it on tape.
Yeah, was it any good?
Well, I was realizing as I was reading it that my sister spoiled the whole book for me when I was like,
Oh, don't tell me then.
but I
Don't-
remembered it. I remember the whole thing. Well, that she spoiled while I was listening. It's good. It's a good
she
book.
spoiled
though.
it.
Not too long either.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to say, Evan, that's an unfair question, just like the last time. If you just come to my house and look at my bookshelf, I could probably point out 100 books that I want to read now that I haven't gotten to. I suffer that thing of buying the great books that I'll probably never get to. So I want to answer that. I've been reading this book by Dr. Berquist on all his collected writings that was gifted to me by a very, very special friend who's one of our advisors on our advisor committee who must not be named at the moment. But Dr. Berquist was one of the founders and one of the original writers of the Blue Book at Thomas Aquinas College. And there's profound depth and wisdom in all his writing. So I really want to get through that. I've read the first few essays, and I'm trying to get through. It's like your Dostoevsky's War and Peace. We're trying to, all right, Tolstoy, War and Peace, trying to get through that. So, Evan, unfair question.
What's another book?
There's so many. Oh my goodness.
Can I tell you a book I'm reading right now, which I wouldn't recommend necessarily?
Tell me.
It's called John Dies in the End.
That's what it's called?
It's totally modernist and
Oh my gosh.
cynical and hilarious.
Yeah.
John Dies in the End. I'm going to play the prologue for you as soon as this is done.
Oh, please. And Evan, in the next minute, could you write down the one book you want to read that you haven't, just so we can, I just want to get an idea of a good answer to that question. So, Evan's a great soul. He's digging into Dante and all these other great classical authors. He wants to rewire the West to make it traditional. So, what a great guy.
What a guy, eh?
Honestly, what a guy.
It's something
Yeah.
I keep saying to people is I'm always like introducing people to each other. Like I can't wait for you to meet Jacob.
I want to meet Jacob.
Jacob doesn't know you yet.
Right.
When Jacob meets you and chats with you, he will realize that the world is better than he thought it was because he didn't know
I don't
you
know about that.
existed. And you'll think the same thing.
I'll think that for sure.
You'll
I
think
don't know
that
if he
when
will.
you meet him, you'll be like, wow, the world's better.
Oh, good.
It's beautiful beautiful people to meet. There's so many good people.
Does he live here and work at
Yeah.
Steubenville?
You will love him.
Okay.
I can't wait. We're going to get together tomorrow. Oh, we can smoke hookah together.
Let's smoke
You ever
hookah
smoked
tomorrow.
hookah before?
I've never smoked hookah.
We're going to do that.
Okay. We're doing that tomorrow.
Yeah, I bought a hookah for just the
Did you
fun
really?
of it. Yeah, it's out there.
Okay, we're doing it.
But I don't ever want to smoke it on here because I'm
No.
afraid people think I'm doing marijuana. here.
Right. And we're not doing that.
No.
Good.
Yeah. Not on set.
Not on set.
Yeah. Or in private.
There's no need.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Oh my goodness.
everybody who is watching, I want to invite you one last time if you would consider joining our community on Locals. Locals is a free speech platform that allows us to say stuff without kicking us off. I do daily podcasts over on Locals called Morning Coffee. So every morning at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we chat about theological and philosophical things. Tomorrow morning at 8:30, I'm going to be pounding espresso and talking about, we're going to read from Aquinas' article in the Summa about whether or not God's existence is self-evident. You don't actually have to pay anything to join Locals. Locals is kind of like, say, another social media thing like Twitter or Facebook. So you just have to sign up to it to get access to these videos. Of course, you can support us on Locals, and when you do, you get a bunch of free stuff in return. But I really don't know how much longer YouTube will allow this kind of speak. We'll see. Maybe these big social media platforms are realizing that they just can't keep whacking every mole down, and it might be better just to allow decent free speech. So I don't know, but click that link to join the community there because it's really beautiful. mattfradd.locals.com. Check it out. And then check out all of Steve's wonderful resources, which are also in the link below.
Yes. Links below. Neil put them there.
And you have a newsletter.
I have a newsletter coming out. City of Truth. A podcast called Finding the Lost. I'm looking for teachers for the St. Thomas
What's
Fellowship.
going on?
St. Thomas More. And one more thing I wanted to say is this. The culminate all of this, to look at Lizzie Warren, the real missing link here is that we no longer have civil debate. I love what you're doing with the local thing. We need to sit down and talk with people who don't agree with us.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing. I'm actually having a guy on my little podcast who is pro CRT. I don't think he's going to appreciate talking to me, but I'm going to try to bring, he's a professor in Florida. I'm going to try to bring him in and have a conversation about critical race theory. And I'm going to try to bridge the gap. It probably won't work out, but I'm still going to try. And I think we should.
Let me know when that comes out so I can share it. That
I'll
sounds
let you know.
fascinating.
Yeah, I really want to try to, I'm going to have him answer the basic questions, and I'm not going to be provocative, but I really want him to hopefully help us understand how we might be able to begin to bridge the gap with civil debate on things we disagree about. I think that's maybe the next step for all of us is how do we, like you said, how do we talk to people with whom we disagree? I don't know how we'd talk to Lizzie. I just don't know. But we ought to contemplate how.
Yeah, agreed. So you didn't like that cigar?
I did. I liked it. It burned out. I was going to light it again. I was just a little embarrassed to try it again.
You can, after we end, you can light it and I'll play the prologue to John Dies in the End.
Exactly right. That's what
all
we're
right.
doing.
Thanks, everybody. God bless.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Neil.
much.
Thanks, Shayla. Thanks.